Apocalyptic black technology battleship system. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 251 Channels. Chapter 254 Channels. The sensation caused by Chen Guangyao's incident soon subsided with the approaching zombie army. The day after Xia Bai learned the news from Li Jinggang, they spread the entire information. There is no need to hide this kind of thing, because judging from the current situation, it is only a matter of time before this batch of zombies arrive at Anyang Mountain. Up and down Anyang Mountain, whether they are military personnel or non-military personnel, it is necessary prepare in advance. Of course, this news undoubtedly made the situation on Anyang Mountain tense. With zombies in front of them, most people can hardly take care of other insignificant things. The Changbai Mountain dispatch team planned by Xia Bai has already set off. It was selected from among Hao Zhuang's people. Half of the journey was empty, and the other half was left to those guys to go on their own. After all, the current situation in Changbai Mountain is unclear. Xia Bai's helicopter formation has a limited number of helicopters and even more limited pilots. The goal of flying to Changbai Mountain is too obvious, and there is a possibility of being detained. Although Changbai Mountain cannot be short of one or two, it's a civilian helicopter, but it flew over Anyang Mountain, so the meaning is different. It may have been simply suppressed. And the current situation, once the helicopter is suppressed, it really can't be recovered. Therefore, Xia Bai only sent people halfway. In fact, the people they sent were not many. There were only 5 people in total. According to Huang Qiulan's plan, he planned to open up the situation by doing business. So the people he selected, they were all business-minded guys, and they only brought 2 things: gold bars and yogurt. With Xia Bai's battleship, gold is just the most basic ordinary resource for him. As long as Xia Bai wants to build it, he can build it as much as he wants. Therefore, there is not much gold in other places. Bai can take out a lot at will. Xia Bai has never done business, but he is very heroic. He just throws out a pile of gold bars and lets them do it. The business is just a cover to obtain the information needed by Anyang Mountain. That's the key. The members of the Anyang Mountain Guards who were selected by Hao Zhuang were dumbfounded when they saw the yellow gold bars. They thought that the 5 of them were just allowed to go to Changbai Mountain to hang out, but Xia Bai didn't expect the shot was so generous. After all, there are few people, and Anyang Mountain is now besieged by a wave of corpses. Leaving Anyang Mountain by taking the empty road, it is destined to be impossible to bring too many things, and the reason why I brought yogurt. This is not the bad taste of Xia Bai, a yogurt lover before the apocalypse. Yogurt was the most common thing in ordinary people's lives. But after the apocalypse, as time goes by, dairy products become increasingly rare. Now, even a piece of milk can be exchanged for a gold ring, and yogurt as this kind of processed product is extremely rare. In the current apocalyptic environment, it is an absolute high-end product with a price but no market. These 5 people cannot bring many things. According to Huang Qiulan and others, it is best to bring some high-precision things can immediately open up the situation when they arrive in Changbai Mountain, and then allow the gold they bring to circulate. If An Kisheng really has complete control of Changbai Mountain, these people sent by Xia Bai will not be able to hide them. Instead of doing this, it is better to be generous. Of course, according to the analysis of Huang Qiulan and his team, An Kisheng should not be able to care about these things now. Anyang's attitude and prying eyes are far from a threat to Changbai Mountain and An Kisheng, let alone any target. Perhaps Xia Bai's Anyang Mountain is now at its peak among ordinary survivor bases, but at a higher level, it is far from enough in the competition between the military and the government in Changbai Mountain. If you simply send people to inquire about information and do business, no one will do anything to them. At most, Zhu Liangzheng may take action, but China's social system determines that conglomerates like the Zhu Group will not do anything before the end of the world. Although the latter's influence is large, it is still limited. In fact, Xia Bai himself could think of a rough idea of these things, but in terms of analysis, it would be the group of people under Huang Qiulan's command. Xia Bai couldn't help but gasp slightly. However, according to Huang Qiulan and her team's idea, the first batch to open up the situation might be sweet potatoes. Although sweet potatoes are also grown in Xiangbei Mountain, there are too many people there. There are definitely many people at the top, and the price of sweet potatoes has always been high. But when Xia Bai took out the kefi, that was more expensive than gold. These people were all dumbfounded. They didn't expect that Xia Bai would secretly hide this kind of milk thing. Although many people are very curious about where Xia Bai's kefi comes from. After all, there is not even a cow in any mountain at the moment, but everyone is very restrained. The curiosity is curiosity. Xia Bai doesn't mean to say it, so he doesn't. No one dared to really ask this question, especially after the Chenguangaiyao incident, and no one dared to be presumptuous in front of Xia Bai. Even Huang Qiulan was slightly afraid of Xia Bai. Although she didn't do anything to be sorry for Xia Bai, but as Hao Zhuang and Xia Bai said before, she also got an outfit that she could never get in her life before the apocalypse, and she did a lot of things secretly. It will only do no harm to any Yang Mountain and Xia Bai. Of course, Xia Bai actually knew that this was inevitable. Everyone has selfish motives. People like Huang Qiulan seem to be in a high position, but they also have their own pressures and threats. Of course, they will also seek benefits in their own positions. There are selfless people in this world, but they are in the minority after all. Xia Bai wants to use them, he must accept and tolerate their small actions, because it is these small actions that allow these people to sit safely in their positions and truly contribute to the construction of any Yang Mountain. Favoritism and selflessness are two terms that are absolutely opposite in concept, but in reality, only the coexistence of these two can make everything develop in a better direction. Human beings are such incredible creatures. People like Huang Qiulan who joined later will never be able to establish the same relationship as Hao Zhuang and Xia Bai. The relationship between them can only be more inclined to the relationship between superiors and subordinates. Therefore, although Xia Bai had been very friendly to these behaviors in the past, Huang Qiulan and the others saw Xia Bai's decisiveness and thunderousness in killing, and they would be more measured in doing things. Chapter 252 Yang Wenshan. Chapter 255 Yang Wenshan. Somewhere in Xiangbei Mountain, in Yang Wenshan's room. Anki was slowly lighting a cigarette. Although Zhu Liangzheng said that Ankizheng had begun to reinforce the military in the Greater Kingdom Mountains, Ankizheng, as one of the top commanders above the Xiangbei Mountains, would not actually take action personally. Especially at this time of year. There are zombies everywhere. Due to the huge population, Xiangbei Mountain gathers survivors too quickly, and the security and medical standards are not up to standard. There are even live zombies in some places, and there are also many smart zombies mixed in. Among them, a joint search team established by the government, Scientific Research Center and Xiangbei Mountain Health Bureau is investigating the presence of pathogens and infected people every day. Therefore, high-level people have always lived in seclusion, fearing that they would be bitten by a zombie when they walked into an uninhabited corner, although it was heard that Yang Wenshan had previously obtained a virus-suppressing drug from Xia Bai of Yang Mountain, and that a lot of this drug was now being produced in the Scientific Research Center, but according to Ankizheng, that thing cannot fundamentally resist the zombie virus. It can only delay the time and cycle of infection in an infected person. With the current Scientific Research Center's ability to copy and produce that kind of drug, it is possible to make an infected person take the medicine regularly. It is almost impossible for a person to never become a zombie. Ankizheng's mind wandered for a moment on these unimportant things before he came back to his senses. This meant that his mental state was a little dazed. Nearly 2 days had passed since the day when the force was attacked by a large group of zombies, and Ankizheng only slept for a few hours in total. Although he seems very laid back, he always has to deal with things big and small. What made him slightly annoyed was that Zhu Liangzheng couldn't even handle a single Yang Mountain, and even had to go back and report his failure. Sure enough, the survivors of civilian enterprise groups may be stronger in terms of business operations, but in terms of real skills, they are still far behind, and they are not even as clean and neat as ordinary survivors. Yang Wenshan's room was extremely clean and simple. It was no different from the standard room of ordinary soldiers. It was a small room with a bed and a table. With the advent of the end of the world, there were not even many electronic devices in the room, only the necessary communication facilities. At this moment, there were two people sitting in this small room. Point and Key was smoking on the only chair in the room, while Yang Wenchen was sitting on the edge of the bed, half of his body hidden in the shadows. Looking a little uncertain, Point and Key was lighting a cigarette, and wanted to wait for Yang Wenchen to speak first. As a winner, he did have the qualifications. Through his own skills and arrangements, he changed the world on Xiangbei Mountain in just one night. After suppressing Yang Wenchen's old faction, he became the undisputed overlord of Xiangbei Mountain and even the entire 3 eastern provinces, stabilizing the situation. At least that's what Nkisheng thought. But unfortunately, half of the cigarette Nkey was lighting had been smoked out, and Yang Wenchen in the corner had no intention of speaking. Yang Wenchen is almost 60 this year. He has grey hair and wears simple clothes. He is sitting on the edge of a slightly soft bed, but his body still looks tall and strong, like an old and waning tiger, but younger than strong. The young tigers are even more alarming. Although the dying tiger is old, it has experienced experience and methods. In the end, it was Nkey who spoke first. He took a puff of the cigarette and spit it out. He watched the smoke slowly drifting in the dim light of the slightly dreamy room, and said concisely, "I need your help, Yang." Wenchen glanced at him, and pursed his lips, but still seemed to have no intention of speaking. Nkisheng knew that the old man did not want to talk to him. He sighed and said, "My thoughts are for everyone's good. The situation has stabilized now, and the situation is developing in a good direction. Chief, isn't this right? Is this the situation you hoped to see before? The situation in Xiangbei Mountain is stable, and the chaotic situation is united in space. Humanity has truly formed an alliance. But now, what I need, is only your full support. Once you support me fully, and the human power of the entire 3 eastern provinces will be integrated, and then, Key was talking a lot, and his speaking speed was not fast. Combined with the puffs of cigarettes and the smoke he exhaled, it was like he was outlining a perfect and hopeful future picture, full of amazing temptation. But Yang Wenchen spoke before Nkisheng finished speaking. He raised his head in the corner, his face hidden and the shadows looked a little uncertain. He glanced at Nkisheng. The look in his eyes was not very friendly. "I hope Xiangbei Mountain will stabilize, but I never thought about cooperating with zombies." Hearing Yang Wenchen's words, Nkisheng didn't look too surprised, nor did he show any incredulous expression. He just said, "Yes, I did cooperate with intelligent zombies, and I used them to fight. With clever skills, we got rid of the 13 kings on Xiangbei Mountain, and even used their power to trap our army in the greater Kingdom Mountains." Yang Wenchen glanced at him, but said nothing. And Key said, "But there is no way around it. We need long-term stability, and cannot let the current situation in Xiangbei Mountain continue to develop like this. I need to suppress your power too. The way you suppress my power is to let the zombies massacre our army. Then with the help of your alliance with the zombies, you can save the army in Daxinganling with overwhelming force, and win your supreme reputation in Xiangbei Mountain as a savior." And status? Yang Wenchen's eyes were heavy. He was sitting in the shadows. He looked like a dying old man, but his voice and expression were very powerful. He looked at Nkisheng, who was close at hand, and said, "So, in this way, you, who stand high in Xiangbei Mountain, sacrifice the vitality of human beings, and even watch the intelligent zombies expand and grow in Xiangbei Mountain. Are you on the side of the living or the dead? Do you want me to help you? Do you want me to help you destroy Xiangbei Mountain, or do you want me to help you collect the corpses?" Yang Wenchen's words were quite rude, and Nkisheng's expression changed slightly in an instant. If another person were to sit here and say Yang Wenchen's words, he would definitely fall out immediately, but at this moment, he just took a breath and said as calmly as possible, "I have my plan." Chapter 253 Two-Faced Hand. Chapter 256 Double-Faced Hand. Yang Wenchen's anger only lasted for a short while before he returned to calm. The old man sitting on the edge of the bed deep in the room fell silent again. Nkisheng knew that this meant Yang Wenchen's attitude Although Yang Wenchen was currently trapped in his room under semi-house arrest and seemed to be unable to cause any trouble in Changbai Mountain, and Qi was, if you want to truly and completely gain absolute control over Changbai Mountain, you still need Yang Wenchen. He took a slight breath to calm down his slightly irritable and angry mood. He glanced at Yang Wenchen and crushed the cigarette butt in his hand into the ashtray. Old Yang, don't be so angry. Admit it, what I did was a bit disgraceful. You were fighting life and death at the front, while I was playing tricks behind you. Yang Wenchen said, I don't care what conspiracy you play, but if you do this, you may ruin the entire Changbai Mountain and even the northeast region. The remaining survivors and our brothers may all die in your stupid ambition. Yang Wenchen's words were as polite as ever. It could be seen that he had no good attitude toward Nkisheng. Nkisheng looked more educated. He glanced at Yang Wenchen, took a slight breath, and said, I just said that I have my plan. I'm a senior member of the military. Of course I'm determined. I have moved to stand on the side of the living. What I'm doing now is certainly selfish, but more importantly, it is for the foreseeable and better future and prospects. Yang Wenchen remained silent and had no intention of speaking. Nkisheng knew that it was not easy to convince this guy. After thinking about it, he was probably considering what he should say and what he should never say, and said, I admit, the first step of the plan now, it seems extremely dangerous. I'm using intelligent zombies to weaken our own human power, but this is the first step in forming an alliance with them. They help me completely control the Changbai Mountain survivor base. After that, I will, according to the agreement I reached with their core circle, the areas of the 3 eastern provinces will be redivided. Part of it will be returned to our normal, living hands, while the other part will be handed over to intelligent zombies. From then on, we let's live in peace and not invade each other. On behalf of the human side, I will abide by this promise and divide the safe zone after completely taking control of the Changbai Mountain survivor base, and the intelligent zombies will also be in the replanned safe zone according to the agreement reached with us. They are building a world that belongs to them, and the promise of both parties is that intelligent zombies will gather together zombies, intelligent zombies and non-intelligent zombies, and use their advantages among the zombies to completely transform the zombies into normal ones. Separate the living people, and on behalf of humans and Changbai Mountain, I guarantee that on the premise that intelligent zombies and zombies will no longer launch attacks on normal living people, we will no longer launch conventional attacks or even extermination attacks on intelligent zombies and zombies below. According to this plan, in the future, we will not need to do anything at all. The core circle of intelligent zombies promises that they will help us clean up the zombies in the 3 northeastern provinces and classify them into a designated area. We will not. It only takes a tiny bit of manpower and ammunition to usher in a human safety zone that belongs entirely to us, not to mention the impact on the region caused by our use of weapons of mass destruction or even chemical weapons. Yang Wenchen glanced at him and said, is this your plan? Of course it's impossible. And Qi was sitting on the side near the light. His eyes slowly moved down, looking at the lingering smoke rising from the cigarette butt in the ashtray in front of him, and said solemnly, I have seen the scientific research center, the research direction of the intelligent zombies, and I also know what kind of things they are. Although this plan is planned in this way, from a human perspective, it is beneficial to both zombies and humans, but for zombies, especially for intelligent zombies, their survival depends on living cells or viruses of the same kind. From this perspective, the blueprint outlined in my plan, for zombies, in a sense, is unfavorable. They cooperate with me, and may have other plans. Yang Wenchen said, then what are you going to do? Qi was very confident. He said, no matter what the intelligent zombies want to do, their ultimate goal is to defeat the Changbai Mountain survivor base. Now, I have found out who they are in this way, and at what position. It seemed that I had introduced zombies into Changbai Mountain, and even sat back and watched them grow bigger, but in fact, I use this method to control every move of these zombies in the palm of my hand. Here, no matter what they want to do, I will watch them all the time. When the plan develops normally, they can't find the opportunity and are forced to start gathering zombies according to the plan, putting themselves and ordinary zombies together. gathered in the same area. We only need a simple bombing to wipe out most of the zombies in the 3 northeastern provinces overnight. Without much effort, we will own an entire area in the 3 northeastern provinces. A zombie-free safe area. When Yang Wenshun heard this, he almost completely understood Nkizheng's thoughts. Nkizheng's idea is actually very simple. Now, with the help of intelligent zombies, everyone gets what they need to help him achieve the goal of establishing a survivor base in Changbai Mountain. To this end, he even does not hesitate to sit back and watch the intelligent zombies break into the internal and even top-level structure of the Mutual Rescue Association, went on to kill the 13 kings, and even took the initiative to release the power of the military. Using his own abilities in the military, Yang Wenshun's troops fell directly into the obvious trap of intelligent zombies. This consumes the power of Yang Wenshun's faction, and at the same time, uses this incident to suppress Yang Wenshun's prestige among the Changbai Mountain survivor base, and then completely secures his position through his own rescue and suppression of zombies. After that, this is part of Enki's plan to kill the donkey. He will use his own plan to get rid of the zombies, completely clear the northeast region, and achieve security and stability in a short period of time. Yang Wenshun glanced at Nkizheng. He could see that Nkizheng was very confident. This man seemed to have anticipated every possibility. He also seemed to be very clear that intelligent zombies had abilities that were no lower than those of normal humans. Wisdom and thinking points. So Yang Wenshun was silent for a moment and said slowly, "I just hope that the situation can develop as you planned." Chapter 254 Yang Wenshun's attitude. Chapter 257 Yang Wenshun's attitude. Nkizheng's face looked a little ugly. He was silent for a moment and said, "You still don't want to help me, Yang?" Wenshun shook his head and said, "The current situation is like this. If your plan and ideas are correct, then the final result will definitely be good. But if you fail, someone must stand up and do something else." As Enki listened to such words, his face became increasingly ugly. He did not look at Yang Wenshun's blurred face in the shadow. His eyes just stayed on the ashtray in front of him and the cigarette. But in the ashtray, his expression was gloomy. King changed for a while, but after all, she did not have an attack, but said, "Then you have a good rest here. I will leave first." With that said, the man stood up from his seat and left Yang Wenshun's room. Yang Wenshun took a breath and fell into a long silence in the shadow of the room. He knew very well why Nkizheng came to him. After all, he was the #1 person in charge of the Liao provincial military region and even the entire Eastern 3 provincial military region. Although with the advent of the end of the world, the old institutional system collapsed, his prestige and voice still remained existence. Therefore, although now Nkizheng has achieved an absolutely overwhelming advantage in the power of Changbai Mountain, he still will not do anything to Yang Wenshun. He cannot even hold Yang Wenshun here for too long, otherwise the following will still happen. It may cause a huge backlash. This is caused by the old social system and military structure. In Chinese society, seniority and connections have unimaginable power at any time, not to mention Yang Wenshun. He is a powerful person himself. Before the end of the world, he was able to sit in that position. The connections and resources he represented were beyond the imagination of Nkizheng. Although the end of the world is a reshuffle, it does not mean that everything will happen. Reset point. As long as Yang Wenshun is still here and has not made a thorough statement, Nkizheng will not be able to truly take over Changbai Mountain. Of course, judging from the current situation, Nkizheng is almost successful. Although Yang Wenshun has been under house arrest by Nkizheng in his room since the day of the incident, he still has his own channels and information and knows exactly what has happened in Changbai Mountain these days. First is the unexpected trap in the Daxinganling area. Originally, Yang Wenshun and Nkizheng's joint plan was to defend against zombies first, so Yang Wenshun did not make any fuss about sending troops. Those sent out were his own people. In fact, this kind of mentality also it is inseparable from the rapid collapse of Yang Wenshun's faction. Yang Wenshun never thought that Enki was so bold. The current overall situation is definitely not good, and Enki is very likely to make dangerous moves at this time. Millions of living people in the Changbai Mountains and even the northeast region were buried in it. Therefore, on the day of the incident, Yang Wenshun had almost no preparations. and Qi was covering the sudden influx of zombies in the Daxinganling area. Regardless of the militaries, no matter how advanced the technology is, it is impossible to detect it in advance. Therefore, on the day when the incident broke out, Qi was forcibly detaining the unprepared Yang Wenshun and letting him disappear from the public eye. The situation turned one-sided. On the plus side with Qi. Secondly, on the other hand, Qi's Heng directly attacked the survivors and used the intelligent zombies rooted in the Mutual Rescue Club to take down the 13 kings. What kind of a group are the 13 kings? Everyone on Xiangbei Mountain was wiped out. As we all know, many people hope that they will disappear forever. Although the bloodbath of Operation Thunder this time is also frightening, the effect is good. The reputation of the Mutual Rescue Association has suddenly risen again, and when those who are also in Xiangbei Mountain influential forces, such as the Scientific Research Center and the Zhejiang Group, know very well who is behind this thunderous bloodbath and what it means, so they will be restrained by this method and will not be involved. At this time, it becomes a constraint for Qi's Heng, but he will become more honest. This is also the most common golden mean among Chinese people. In countries such as the United States and other countries, groups with large numbers of private armed forces may even clash with the military. But in Xiangbei Mountain, forces such as the Zhejiang Group have their own armed forces. There is no doubt among the survivors, but when facing the military, you still have to shrink your neck honestly. Qi's Heng either didn't take action, but when he did, he took control of the situation like a thunderbolt. Yang Wenshun had to admit that he was indeed careless. He wanted to deal with the zombies, while Qi's Heng wanted to deal with him. Yang Wenshun probably knows that there are zombies in the Mutual Rescue Association, because the Mutual Rescue Association is one of the best survivor forces in Xiangbei Mountain. However, due to its model, the structure is very loose, but Yang Wenshun has never found out who it is. Who, thinking about it now, may still be Qi who is causing trouble. Half of Yang Wenshun's body was hidden in the shadows. He knew what he had to do. Qi's Heng's plan was not entirely wrong, and the current situation had developed to this point, but Yang Wenshun had to make other preparations. Qi's Heng wants to use this plan to completely clean up the zombies, and the zombies are undoubtedly trying to take this opportunity to take over the Xiangbei Mountain survivor base. The two may know each other well, and Qi's Heng may also be interested in the intelligent zombies. The plan is prepared, but Yang Wenshun also has to make his own preparations in the current situation. Yang Wenshun no longer intends to engage in a power struggle. Just as he had the same idea when he sent troops to the Greater Khingan Mountains before, if the zombies are not contained, the Xiangbei Mountain survivor base will be destroyed, and no one will be the winner. If Qi's Heng's plan really succeeds, it won't be too late for Yang Wenshun to turn to him. If Qi's Heng's plan fails, the intelligent zombies will cause huge chaos in Xiangbei Mountain, and someone must come out to put an end to it. The advantage now is that with Qi's Heng's action, the largest force of intelligent zombies in Xiangbei Mountain has emerged. Although many ordinary people are not aware of the existence of intelligent zombies, for Yang Wenshun, those groups the intelligent zombies hiding in the Mutual Rescue Club are already obvious targets. He needs to gather a force to find out the relationship network of these intelligent zombies without being noticed. Just like anti-drugs before the end of the world, once the intelligent zombies take action, he is ready to uproot them at any time. Prepare. Yang Wenshun was silent for a moment and slowly lay down on the bed. Plans are plans, reality is reality. No matter what Yang Wenshun wants to do, he can only temporarily fall into waiting. Chapter 255 Current Situation. Chapter 258 Current Situation. June 22, 2019. Xia Bai was controlling the battleship flying across the sky. Under the battleship, there was a dense tide of corpses after a large number of zombies emerged in Anyang Mountain. Xia Bai no longer went to Shangjing City to kill zombies. Instead, he bombed the zombies in this area for days. After all, this group of zombies was still some distance away from Anyang Mountain, the zombie tide. The advance was slow, but because of this, more zombies kept gathering from all directions. Xia Bai had been slaughtering here for several days, but the tide of zombies still seemed to be so numerous. The third phase of the wall on Anyang Mountain is still under construction. According to the current speed, the third phase of the wall will be built before this wave of zombies merges into the original wave of zombies on Anyang Mountain. By then, this batch of zombies will also be gone. There may be some threat to any Yang Mountain in a short period of time. In the process, Xia Bai even found an intelligent zombie point. That was actually a coincidence. The intelligent zombie was mixed in a large group of ordinary zombies, and it happened to be carrying a drum-like object to gather the zombies. Xia Bai was spotted by Xia Bai, who was flying through the sky, and he shot it directly from the air. The place was blown to pieces on the spot point. Although there are many zombies here, the intelligent zombies do not dare to show up. Xia Bai's battleship is in the sky, with absolute air supremacy and overwhelming firepower advantage. With the weapons displayed by the intelligent zombies, it was even difficult to break through the electromagnetic shield layer of Xia Bai's battleship, let alone knock him down from the sky point. Of course, Xia Bai must also be wary of the existence of Type 3 infectious agents. It is said that during the battle in the Greater Kingdom Mountains, intelligent zombies used this kind of thing as a biochemical weapon on the battlefield, causing very serious losses to the military. This Type 3 infectious agent is a variant of the original biochemical virus. The creatures it spawns are more like monsters than zombies. Moreover, the creatures born from this virus are extremely difficult to kill and will last for a long time. In a state of self-evolution, once they suffer non-fatal external damage, as long as they have enough material to supplement them, they will undergo some kind of adaptive mutation and become more powerful. Xia Bai drove the battleship to hunt zombies. The main firepower system was still in charge of Alpha and Chen Qiansheng, who was recruited by Xia Bai as a coolie. As a captain, he didn't have much to do, so he occupied the driver's seat plus the captain's seat. Just get up there and give orders. And because of this, when Xia Bai looked at the scene under his feet, his thoughts were a little wandering. From the night of the shocking change in Changbai Mountain to now, a lot of time has passed, not to mention that the people sent by Xia Bai have barely managed to open up a little situation in the chaotic Changbai Mountain, just as Xia Bai expected, and Xia didn't care so much about any Yang Mountain. He was currently in the critical moment of controlling the Changbai Mountain survivor base, and he would never be so free that he would take the initiative to allocate his energy to deal with the few people sent by Xia Bai. Therefore, from all aspects, the news it also came like snowflakes. Of course, what Xia Bai could obtain was only superficial information. For example, the 13 kings were bloodbathed by the Mutual Rescue Society overnight, and the military forces in the Daxinganling war zone were plunged into a wave of corpses as time goes by. The situation in the Changbai Mountain survivor base is also stabilizing. As the Mutual Rescue Society slaughters the 13 kings, this organization, although huge, has always had a loose organizational structure and no cohesion, completely shook the entire Changbai Mountain overnight. The survivor base, coupled with Nkizeng's faction who firmly stands behind the Mutual Rescue Association, is gradually dominating the entire Changbai Mountain survivor base. The Mutual Rescue Association has become the largest survivor force among the survivors, and has even achieved he was able to challenge the local government, and to Xia Bai's surprise, the leader of the Mutual Rescue group that massacred the 13 kings that night seemed to be an acquaintance of his Chuking. Of course, Xia Bai has never met that Chuking. He only heard that she was also a woman, and she also escaped from Ice City. She was one of the original members of the Mutual Rescue Association. Xia Bai couldn't help but contact him that he had accidentally saved. However, Xia Bai is more inclined to think that the current Chuking is someone else. After all, Xia Bai remembers that the Chuking she rescued in Bingcheng was completely careless and careless. Although the female man is more good looking, Xia Bai can't connect that Chuking with the bloodbath of the 13 kings and the manipulation of Nkizeng. After June 17th and 18th, Nkizeng also immediately rescued the military troops trapped in the Greater Kingdom Mountains. The process was surprisingly smooth. Nkizeng's troops were invincible. It was like a paper dummy in front of him, and he was easily defeated. However, the news that Type 3 infectious agents had appeared in large numbers in the Greater Kingdom Mountains war zone spread, causing people to panic. For an ordinary survivor base, a Type 3 infected body is a disaster-level existence, and can easily tear through the defense layer established by ordinary survivor bases against ordinary zombies. For ordinary survivors, ordinary extreme mutants are a disaster, let alone type 3 infections that even the military is worried about. However, Xia succeeded in the Daxinganling war zone. 3 days ago, he completely brought the military troops who were trapped in the Daxinganling war zone back to Bai Mountain for repairs. However, the number of military casualties was not announced to the outside world. However, this time's success, but it won Xia a huge reputation. During this process, Yang Wenchen and the people of Yang Wenchen's faction were surprisingly silent. The information Xia Bai could get was that there was something going on at the top of Bai Mountain. But Xia Bai didn't know the specific situation. Moreover, except for the last time Zhu Liangzheng took the initiative to contact him, the military at the Bai Mountain survivor base also did not contact Xia Bai again. Although Xia Bai heard about Li Jianbei's 2nd the 37th Division also withdrew, but Commander Li seemed to have no time to pay attention to Xia Bai at the moment. After all, the affairs of the military are the affairs of the military. Bai Mountain is in chaos. Li Jianbai would never think of asking Xia Bai to help. Although the military and Anyang Mountain have a cooperative relationship in name, in the eyes of the military, especially in the eyes of Li Jianbai, a decent guy, that Xia Bai knows, Anyang Mountain is a survivor force. No matter what happens, as long as there are risks, he will never let the booming Anyang Mountain get involved in the chaos. He and Xia Bai may have reneged on their debts, but he sticks to his bottom line and will never involve the survivors in unnecessary risks. Of course, in Li Jianbei's view, with the mere power of Anyang Mountain, even if he helps, it is impossible to do something. Chapter 256 Fuxin asks for help. Chapter 259 Fuxin asks for help. Xia Bai really couldn't do anything. Compared with ordinary survivor bases, Anyang Mountain is indeed prosperous and powerful at the moment, but compared with the military, it is still far behind. Anyangshan's own armed forces are not large enough, and not formal enough. Although Xia Bai's battleships are powerful, the 4th level battleships still have too many limitations and limited capabilities. They can only play a role in small scale battlefields and events. Larger situations are more difficult to deal with. If Xia Bai wants to intervene in the Bai Mountain survivor base, he can only do it from 2 aspects. First, through normal channels, weighing according to connections, relationships, and power. Second, to suppress it with absolute force. No matter what kind of force you are, my force is here, and you must act honestly, just like when Anyang Mountain was established. But under the current situation, Xia Bai can't do both of these things. According to the normal method, Xia Bai has to kill zombies every day, so where can he find the time to fight with others? He couldn't afford to waste that time, and since he was from Anyang Mountain, it was even more difficult for him to forcibly get a foothold among the many forces in Bai Mountain. And in terms of absolute force, Xia Bai's current 4-level battleship is not enough. Therefore, although Xia Bai is quite concerned about the situation at the Bai Mountain survivor base at the moment, he has no intention of taking action. He just keeps his head down and develops. Anyway, Bai Mountain has not collapsed yet, and Xia Bai doesn't want to become someone like Bai Mountain. Just kidding. He holds a battleship in his hand, and will be the captain and commander of the battleships that span the sky in the future. How could he possibly think about being a local emperor on the ground, who takes care of the survivors' daily necessities? Xia Bai just hopes that Bai Mountain will not fall apart, and that the human forces in the 3 eastern provinces will not suffer great losses. Of course it would be better if Yang Wenchen's faction, which he prefers, is in power, but if not, as long as he does not cause trouble for himself, can handle the internal situation of the Bai Mountain survivor base. It doesn't matter now. Xia Bai's thinking is like a high civilized being looking at the Earth's feudal system. Although it is good to be an emperor, I have a battleship. In the future, I can travel across the stars without being restricted by one place. Wouldn't it be more chic and better if we wouldn't fight for the supplies of a tiny place on a planet, and our life would be more efficient and modern? If Xia knew what Xia Bai was thinking at this moment, he would probably laugh at him, saying that Xia Bai now has a bigger Anyang Mountain, but looks down on the survivor base in Bai Mountain. But when Xia Bai's battleship arrives at the 5th level, even at the 6th level, among the 3 eastern provinces. He will become a very powerful force on his own. We still need to get information about Xia Bai Mountain, but don't worry too much. The most important thing is to retain the vitality of the survivors in the 3 eastern provinces as much as possible. Although in the future higher level battleship systems may provide fully intelligent battleship member systems or even directly create artificial humans, but that requires the battleship to reach a certain level. Reaching a high level is not something that happens overnight, and Xia Bai doesn't like the starry sky overlord status of sitting on a cold throne overlooking all living beings. Although Xia Bai had begun to change and become a leader after a conversation with Balan before, move closer to the direction of the ruler, but he also needs real living people. Friends, partners. Xia Bai also thought about whether he could survive against alien creatures and continue to upgrade his warships in the future, whether he would go to the stars and sail across the galaxy. He even thought about whether he could be the overlord of the galaxy. But even so, Xia Bai didn't want to go on alone. He had a battleship and didn't want to become a lone star. No matter he succeeded or failed, was strong or mediocre, he wanted to have partners and friends by his side. Otherwise, in the boundless starry sky, if he could only upgrade, and fighting for hegemony will only drive people crazy. Of course, Xia Bai didn't think too much about this matter. After all, alien creatures may come to the Earth at any time, and Xia Bai has no certainty that he can defeat or fight them. Thinking about these now is undoubtedly too far, so hurry up and upgrade the battleship. That's the kingly way. Xia Bai glanced at the display of his own energy point count. As the battleship hunted through the zombie tide, the numbers on it kept changing. The current number was 82,110. How long will it take to reach 100,000 energy points? Moreover, Xia Bai expected to get 110,000 to 20,000 energy points before upgrading. After all, the 5th level battleships will be very different from the 4th level battleships. Prepare some more energy points and immediately seize the time to upgrade after the upgrade. The functions corresponding to the 5th level battleship and the high-end items that can be produced are the most important things to make the battleship reach its strongest state. Therefore, it is undoubtedly very important to make some advance amount first. Moreover, after the battleship reaches level 5, according to the information given by the system, the battleship will have the first real super weapon. Xia Bai didn't know much about the situation in Xia Bai Mountain, but the situation in Liao province was not good. After a large number of zombies appeared around Anyang Mountain, large-scale zombies began to appear in various areas of Liao province. Survivor bases everywhere have been seriously threatened, and even the military lines deployed in coastal areas have been impacted by the tide of corpses coming from within Liao province. Although Enki's battle in the Greater Khingan Mountains war zone seemed to have severely damaged and dispersed a large zombie force in Ji province and Langjiang province, the intelligent zombies in Liao province seemed to be taking advantage of various factors. In the Xia Bai Mountains, when the situation left him no time to worry about, he planned to capture the entire Liao province. But it is not easy for intelligent zombies in Liao province to achieve this. Other survivor bases dare not say that, but Xia Bai can guarantee that Anyang Mountain is a hurdle that intelligent zombies can never overcome. At this moment, Xia Bai's battleship communication channel suddenly received an urgent message from the command center inside Anyang Mountain, asking him to immediately establish a call with Xia Bai on the battleship. Xia Bai didn't hesitate and connected directly. What came over there was Xia Bai's voice. Captain Lu's voice was clear and capable, and he spoke quickly. Xia Bai, it has been confirmed that the Fuchs in Survivor base will be in 2 hours. The defense line was breached before, and now the situation is precarious. They are sending out broadcasts to ask for help. No one has responded to them now. According to what they said, the corpse tide is pouring in, and the survivors in Fuchsin cannot rush out, although they are still suffering support, but without assistance, the entire Fuchsin survivor base will become a slaughterhouse within 1 day at the latest. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 257 is that the battleship of Anyang Mountain. Chapter 260 is at the battleship of Anyang Mountain, June 22, 2019, 1633. Fuchs in survivor base. Chen Han's face was very ugly. He is the supreme ruler of the Fuchs in survivor base, and he is also Mr. Chen as Xia Bai and the others call him. In the Fuchs in survivor base, he has to decide everything, and he holds the most powerful power in Fuchs and armed forces. However, at this moment, he felt that his end was coming. The Fuchs in survivor base is located at the old train station in Fuchsin City. The survivor base was established within the originally open station. With walls built around the outside, it can be regarded as an isolated island in the city, which is barely safe. Just 2 hours ago, the wall east of the train station of Fuchs in survivor base was crushed by zombies. At that time, Chen Han's first reaction was to push the zombies back, to ensure the safety of Fuchs in survivor base. Now, outside the railway station wall, there are densely packed zombies. Chen Han doesn't want to break out at all, and he has no absolute certainty that he can break out from here. Therefore, even if there is a gap in the wall, he is still very cautious or timid to hold on here. But it was this decision that put Chen Han, and even Fuchsin as a whole, into the worst situation. When he brought the entire Fuchsin force to the right gap, and was about to push up, an unprecedented explosion occurred in the wall, and all the walls they built in a small area collapsed, and the zombies outside were like it was pouring in like a flood, causing all the living forces in Fuchsin to be trapped here. Facing such a tide of corpses, they could not even retreat, let alone rush out from here. Zombies outside were pouring in continuously. After 2 hours, the tide of zombies had advanced more than 20 meters. However, no one knew how many people had died at the Fuchs in survivor base. Although the situation could be temporarily stabilized, Chen Han, his heart was already completely cold. He holds Fuchsin's cutting-edge armed forces in his hands. He is now trapped here, as if he is stuck in a quagmire, unable to advance or retreat, and there are endless zombies. If this continues, the one who will be beaten to death in the end can only be yourself. Although it seems that the situation is not out of control yet, if this continues, Fuchsin will be bloodbathed by zombies sooner or later. Chen Han's face looked extremely ugly. He stood in front of the only tank in Fuchsin, squinting at the zombies in front of him. Realizing that he had to take a risk, he shouted directly, "Brothers, those who want to survive and don't want to get eaten by zombies here, just follow me and rush out." As soon as he said these words, someone beside him said, "There are too many zombies. With our firepower, we simply can't rush out with all the survivors." Chen Han glanced at him, kicked the man over, and said, "Who said we would bring survivors? Whether they are dead or alive, what does it have to do with you? You want to live." Chen Han's remarks and plans caused an uproar among this group of people. Although many people here are Chen Han's confidants, there are also some who took up arms to fight the zombies because of their relatives and friends in Fuchsin, and some people have kind hearts. How could they watch Chen Han give up all the survivors in Fuchsin? In the past, it was one thing for Chen Han to be domineering, but now it was another thing for him to give up on the survivors immediately. Some survivors stood up to oppose, and the scene became chaotic for a moment, and they were the front line of the entire battlefield. When they became confused, the zombies in front of them advanced even more fiercely. Chen Han didn't expect anyone to dare to contradict him at this time. He suddenly changed his color and pulled out the gun from his waist, seeing that the situation was about to escalate. And it was at this moment that in the corner of the crowded crowd, a man with his head lowered stepped closer to Chen Han through the chaos, holding a knife firmly in his hand, and he was about to. When he arrived at the furious Chen Han, a greater chaos suddenly broke out in front of him, in the direction of the zombies. I don't know what happened over there, but everyone's attraction was instantly pulled over. Even Chen Han turned his head and looked in that direction and gasped. When the man hiding in the chaotic crowd saw this, he silently hid the knife in his cuff and took a half step back. No matter what he was going to do, he seemed to have given up for the time being. And no one at the scene noticed this scene, because the situation in the field was changing. In the direction of the tide of corpses that blocked the Fuchs in survivor base like seawater, there was something coming, roaring and roaring with unstoppable momentum. It was a dark and cold warship. It did not travel above the high clouds, but instead lowered its height and sailed only about 1 or 2 meters above the ground. The end of the tide rolled over all the way, and no matter how many zombies there were, the speed did not slow down at all. Along the way, the zombie tide composed of dense zombies was like paper in front of the battleship, and it was directly penetrated by the fierce force. Behind the battleship, there was a scorched earth covered with corpses, but there were still too many zombies outside. As soon as the battleship passed by, the zombies behind them swarmed up and blocked the place again. However, the survivors who saw this scene in Fuchsin were in deathly silence. The zombie tide trapped them here, and they could not break through. But now this battleship actually penetrated the entire zombie tide so easily. Got it. After a moment of silence, someone shouted, "That's any Angshan's battleship. That's any Angshan's battleship. Any Angshan is here to support. Any Angshan is here to support." Chen Han has also heard of Xia Bai and Xia Bai's battleships in Anyang Mountain, but this is also the first time he has seen Xia Bai's battleships. The rumors about Xia Bai's battleships outside are that they are amazing, and they are more powerful than tanks and planes combined. He didn't believe it at first. When Xia Bai came on behalf of Anyang Mountain before, he didn't care much, but now, he glanced at the battleship, and then at the old tank behind him, that he was proud to regard as the strongest trump card of the Fuchsin survivor base, and couldn't help gritting his teeth. He directly pulled over a subordinate who was also excited and said, "Why are you so happy? There are so many people here with such a small thing. How many people can he take away? Let me ask you, is that indeed the aircraft from Anyang Mountain?" The subordinate was splashed with cold water by Chen Han. His face changed again, and he didn't respond. Chen Han's eyes flickered and he said, "The people on Anyang Mountain will not take you away, but you are all my people. If that spaceship is mine, then we can all survive today. Tell our people and find a way, find an opportunity to take action." Chapter 258 I'm not here for reinforcement. Chapter 261 I'm not here for reinforcement. Chen Han's idea was correct. Xia Bai had no intention of using a battleship to transport people. Level 5 battleships may be able to carry a large number of people, but level 4 battleships are too small and have limited internal space. The population of the Fuchsin survivor base is extremely large. It is difficult for a battleship alone to transport the people here, and here the situation is also different from the previous Yuanping city. The geographical location is relatively open, and the previous method of transporting people in Yuanping city cannot be used. Therefore, when Xia Bai came, the battleship was filled with people. Yi Hanyu, Bailan, and Xia Bai and her people. Originally Xia Bai wanted to bring Hao Zhuang's people here, but Xia Bai insisted, and Xia Bai had no choice. Xia Bai could probably guess the reason while Xia Bai wanted to follow him. It was just because he was worried that Xia Bai would mess up. But it's a pity that Xia Bai really wants to mess up. Yi Hanyu was angry. Although Xia Bai didn't know the reason, Yi Hanyu was unhappy and Xia Bai was unhappy too. Regardless of the time, Xia Bai always said that anyone who dares to touch my people will die. Therefore, Xia Bai used his battleship to separate the corpse tide, and after entering the Fuchsin survivor base, he slightly raised the altitude and stopped on the front position, because Xia Bai had just pointed out through the aerial footage sent back earlier that Fuchsin Mr. Chen Hanshan, the person in charge of the survivor base, is in the front line at this moment. Xia Bai's battleship was parked directly above the tank, casting a large shadow that directly shrouded it. One was in the sky, the other was underground. Under the huge contrast, the majestic tank inexplicably became soft in front of the battleship. Stand up. Immediately afterwards, Xia Bai took people directly off the battleship. Xia Bai said, "There's no need for us to go down, right?" Xia Bai shook his head. The Fuchsin survivor base was quite large and there were many survivors. If he really wanted to take everyone away, the only way would be for the battleship to take the lead and rush out. If he wanted to let the survivors follow the tide of corpses, even if the survivors knew that this was an act of self-protection, it was impossible to achieve it by shouting a few words on the battleship like before. But when he landed with his people from the battleship and saw Chen Han coming up to him as the head of the Fuchsin survivor base, the first thing he said was not this, but, "I'm Yangshan Xia Bai. I heard when our helicopter formation from Anyang Mountain came 2 days ago. Did anyone want to touch my people?" Xia Bai's voice was not loud, but he came in a battleship and everyone's eyes had already been focused on him. When he opened his mouth, his voice spread throughout the whole place. The survivors here who looked happy just now were all stunned for a while. Listen to this posture. The people from Anyang Mountain are not here to reinforce, but are looking for trouble. Xia Bai behind him slapped himself hard on the forehead. Yi Hanyu and Bai Lan, who were standing next to Xia Bai, also looked a little strange. Yi Hanyu also didn't expect that Xia Bai would run down first to hold the Fuchsin survivor base accountable. Chen Han over there was also slightly stunned for a moment, but he had other thoughts in his heart. With a smile on his face, he took the initiative to greet him and said, "You must be Mr. Xia." Mr. Xia is not Mr. Xia." Xia Bai said, "Last time I sent someone here, I was bullied by you, so I came here today to create a scene. I don't care who it is, who dares to let my people. I'm not happy. If you can't give us a satisfactory answer and there are no zombies to massacre the city today, I will kill all the people in Fuchsin survivor base first." Xia Bai's words were not polite at all. Chen Han also had a temper. His face changed slightly, and he said unkindly, "Brother, you are a bit arrogant and defensive." Yi Hanyu, who was standing behind, never expected Xia Bai to say such a thing. Others may not know why Xia Bai said that, but Yi Hanyu knew very well that she did not tell Xia Bai the specific causes and consequences. Bai wanted to vent his anger, so he had no choice but to do this. However, Yi Hanyu did not expect that Xia Bai could say such words as kill all the people in the Fuchsin survivor base. After spending a long time with Xia Bai, Yi Hanyu knew Xia Bai's words were never said in a joke. Yi Hanyu did not expect that Xia Bai would achieve this level, even if she was not harmed. Yi Hanyu couldn't sit still anymore. She took a step forward and wanted to speak, but at this time, Bai Lan next to her held her back. Bai Lan's face was as cold as ever, but he shook his head slightly at her. But Yi Hanyu saw another sentence in her eyes. "Fuchsin dares to bully you, so what if Xia Bai slaughters this place?" Although Bai Lan never asked about previous events, she also noticed that Yi Hanyu was in a bad mood. When she was in Chengyu Middle School, Yi Hanyu was in a bad mood and didn't show much. This time, she suffered a loss in Fuchsin, but looked extremely depressed. Although Bai Lan didn't say anything, she was still holding her breath. A long time ago, when he was in Zhu City, Bai Lan might not have a good impression of the gangster Yi Hanyu, especially when he dealt with Li Ziping before. Seeing such a situation, Yi Hanyu's choice and decisiveness were touching. From that day on, Bai Lan, Hao Zhuang and others regarded her and Chen Yingying as their own, and after getting along for a long time, Yi Hanyu became more like Bai Lan's sister in the apocalypse. Most relatives are separated. These friends and partners who know and can rely on each other are relatives. On this point, Bai Lan and Xia Bai have the same idea in terms of protecting their shortcomings. Don't worry about whether it is right or wrong. It doesn't matter, now that you are strong, don't you just have to protect your shortcomings? Xia Bai didn't pay attention to Yi Hanyu Bai Lan's small theater behind him, but directly shouted, "Alpha!" The artificial intelligence Alpha in charge of the battleship in the sky reacted instantly. The battleship slightly turned its direction and then lowered its altitude. The muzzle of the main gun stretched directly from the air and aimed in the direction of Chen Han and others, although there was still a certain distance. But he was also very arrogant and slapped in the face. This is Xia Bai's response. "I'm arrogant and protective of my shortcomings. What can you do to me?" Chen Han and the other survivors, who were about to have a seizure, were forced to calm down again when they saw the 380mm caliber gun muzzle point. Whether these people want to believe it or not, they must now accept the fact that the Yangshan battleship descended from heaven is not here to save people, but to destroy things. Chen Han took a deep breath, gritted his teeth, and said with a smile, "Mr. Xia, you said that we bullied your people. Do you have any evidence? How do you want us to give you an answer?" "I don't know, and I don't need any evidence," Xia Bai said. "Hanyu, take a look. What can you do to satisfy yourself?" Xia Bai's words almost made Chen Han angry to death. Chapter 259 Take Action. Chapter 262 Take action. At this moment, a burst of chaos suddenly broke out in the direction of the frontline point. Obviously, Xia Bai's intrusion completely disrupted the defense situation here. There were fewer people fighting the zombies in front, and the situation became dangerous. This chaos briefly attracted the attention of everyone present, and even Xia Bai glanced in that direction. Point. If the defense line here is breached, and zombies completely flood in, the situation will take a turn for the worse, and go directly to the worst situation. Point. But at this moment, in the corner, the eyes of the man who just wanted to approach Chen Han flashed. For a while, his eyes moved from Chen Han to Xia Bai, and some kind of danger began to flash in his eyes. After a moment of silence, he took advantage of this opportunity to slowly approach Xia Bai's location. Point. But Chen Han's expression changed drastically. He really wanted to seize Xia Bai's battleship, but he couldn't afford to waste time. The tide of corpses was pouring in, and the entire Fuchsin survivor base was about to be destroyed. Xia Bai, who had the battleship, could directly just pat your butt and leave. Therefore, Xia Bai can take it easy, but Chen Han can't. Although he was very angry with Xia Bai, "You don't even know the specific situation and you want me to explain it?" But he really couldn't help it. He was just itching with hatred. Yi Hanyu, who was in the back, couldn't sit still. Although she knew that Bailan and Xia Bai were doing her best at this moment, Yi Hanyu really didn't expect that Xia Bai's talk of taking out his anger would be so arrogant. In an unreasonable way, according to Yi Hanyu's idea, holding on to death was just to make herself stand out in Fuchsin. After all, Yi Hanyu also knew that Xia Bai wanted to capture a large number of survivors in the Fuchsin survivor base. Point. But judging from the current situation, Xia Bai has lost his mind. Yi Hanyu regretted a little. She should have made the matter clear earlier. She should not have told Xia Bai all about her situation, just for her own petty reasons. Now she is in this posture. Yi Hanyu wanted to be angry, but she didn't expect the situation to develop to this point. However, although Yi Hanyu was a little anxious now, and felt that Xia Bai had gone too far, she still felt inexplicably warm and happy from the bottom of her heart. Point. But at the moment, Yi Hanyu couldn't help but take a step forward, wanting to say something, and quickly let Xia Bai be merciful and merciful. Point. At this time, before Yi Hanyu could really say anything to persuade, a very warm voice suddenly came out from the crowd on the other side, blocking Yi Hanyu and Chen Han, who wanted to speak. He said back, "Girl. My good girl." Yi Hanyu was stunned for a moment, then turned her head and saw her father running out of the crowd, dragging the whole family, very enthusiastic about her, and approaching him with a smile on his face. Xia Bai was slightly surprised when he saw this. He stopped him directly and asked the man whose features looked somewhat similar to Yi Hanyu, "Are you?" "I am Hanyu's father, Yi Tongmu." Yi Hanyu in the back looked at the scene in front of her with some dumbfounded eyes. Her father came up to Xia Bai very enthusiastically, said a lot of nonsense to Xia Bai, and introduced all his family members. Yi Hanyu knew why his father rushed out now. He simply saw that he was highly valued in Anyang Mountain and Xia Bai's battleship was absolutely powerful and safe, so he directly abandoned the Fuchsin survivor base. The camp with Chen Han, through the relationship with his daughter, directly climbed up the big tree of Xia Bai in Anyang Mountain. In fact, Yi Tongmu was also a little dumbfounded. Only now did he understand why the last time he asked his daughter to dedicate himself to Mr. Chen, his daughter refused so domineeringly, and even dared to slap Chen Han. It turned out to be because there was something more behind his daughter. What a great backer. Where did my daughter run errands on Anyang Mountain? Looking at the current posture, she is clearly the mistress of Xia Bai, the leader of Anyang Mountain. Xia Bai didn't know the root cause of this, and he didn't know exactly what this man with a Japanese-like name was thinking. After confirming the man's identity, he waved his hand and said, "Stand back, Anyang Shan guarantees your safety." Lu Yi Bai from behind slapped her forehead, and Yi Hanyu, Yi Hanayu. She didn't know what to say at this moment. Chen Han over there was also a little stunned. His original plan was to have a fight with Xia Bai. After all, when Chen Han first thought about it, he was the leader of the Fuchs in Survivor Base, and Xia Bai had to give him some name, and after he gained a little trust, he would take action directly, take advantage of the chaos to kill Xia Bai, and seize the battleship. But now, he doesn't seem to have said a few words in total. Chen Han felt that he, the leader of the survivor base that had dominated Fuchsin for almost a year, was now simply an insignificant figure. No one cared about what he thought, planned to do, or said. Even if Chen Han wanted to explode and express his anger, he couldn't find a chance. An emotion called frustration was filling his entire soul right now. And Bailan, she didn't pay attention to Chen Han, but was observing the situation around her. There were many people here, and it was chaotic, so someone had to be vigilant. Bailan's vigilance really worked. Her eyes caught sight of a sneaky figure. It was a man, with his head slightly lowered, making a large circle through the chaotic crowd, from in front of them to behind them, and at this moment, everyone's attention was attracted to Yi Tongmu. Quickly rushed towards Xia Bai's position from behind, and even took out a gun directly from his waist. Bailan's face changed instantly, and her reaction was also extremely fast. She asked herself that she could not draw the gun and kill the man as fast as the other person could shoot, so she directly stretched out her hand and pushed it without hesitation. Xia Bai was in front of him. Bailan was the awakened one, and he didn't hold back at all. Xia Bai didn't expect that Bailan would attack him, and he was pushed down on the spot. But because of this, the man's shot fell directly into the air at the same moment. Xia Bai, who was also extremely vigilant from behind, instantly noticed the abnormality and opened fire directly, smashing the man's hand holding the gun to pieces on the spot. However, the man seemed to feel no pain and used his other hand to shoot the gun from his waist. He took out a black tactical dagger and rushed towards Xia Bai on the ground without fear of death. Chapter 260 Bloody Massacre. Chapter 263 Bloody Massacre. Someone shouted intelligent zombies. The scene became chaotic in an instant. Xia Bai and his men pressed forward directly, while Bailan was the closest and directly blocked the intelligent zombie who was bent on hunting Xia Bai. Yi Hanayu also came directly to help. At the same moment, the depressed Chen Han suddenly became excited. Wasn't this the opportunity for him to take action? The depressed expression on Chen Han's face instantly turned into a flush of excitement. At this moment, he could even imagine the grand scene of seizing Xia Bai's battleship and dominating the apocalypse. At that moment, he pulled out the gun from his waist. Come, shoot into the sky, brothers, take action. Kill them, the battleship is ours. Due to time issues, the only people who knew that the battleship was to be robbed were Chen Han's cronies. Most people were in a state of confusion, but at this moment, the people around Chen Han all moved and were ready to take action. In Chen Han's opinion, Xia Bai's daring to disembark from the battleship was simply seeking death. Chen Han is bound to win the battleship. However, he still thought too much. Because at the moment Chen Han shouted do it, the battleships in the sky opened fire, and two triple mounted 25mm caliber artillery fired directly at the crowd on Chen Han's side. After shooting, in an instant, the place turned into a slaughterhouse, with blood and flesh flying everywhere, and the ground howling miserably. The battleship can fire, of course, because of the existence of Alpha, and Alpha really didn't fire, because Chen Han shouted to take action. Its level of intelligence is not that high. From Chen Han's words of taking action, it cannot be inferred that Chen Han is taking action. Han wanted to seize the battleship, unless Chen Han shot Xia Bai. The reason why Alpha took the initiative to fire was mainly because of the intelligent zombie killer just now. The moment the killer opened fire, Xia Bai was pushed by Bailan and fell to pieces, and she heard a series of prompts. Dear Captain, you are under attack. Please return to the battleship immediately. Dear Captain, your safety is being threatened. This was a prompt and warning from the system, and Alpha, who was given the authority to temporarily control the battleship by Xia Bai, also came to the same conclusion in an instant. Dear Captain, you are under attack. Alpha recommends immediate fire cover. The main system has been authorized to unlock the security protocol. Please ask the captain to authorize the weapon system. The weapon system has been authorized. Alpha will provide you with fire cover. Please return to the battleship immediately. The application permission of the weapon system was given to Alpha before. Naturally, there was no need for secondary authorization at this time. Therefore, this guy opened fire directly. With Alpha's simple intelligence, Xia Bai was affected by this new environment. Attack. Therefore, everyone in this new environment is the enemy and target that should be attacked. So, it opened fire at Chen Han, and others very violently. Chen Han stood at the front, the loudest, and was killed on the spot. With a few 25mm artillery bullets, Chen Han's entire body was torn to pieces. Poor Chen Han, he just grabbed the slightest chance and was shot and killed on the spot inexplicably. The most important thing is that the reason why he was shot was not because he wanted to grab the battleship, but because he was attacked by Xia. The intelligent zombie Bai launched the assassination was implicated, so he was killed as a villain as well. If Chen Han knew about this situation, he would probably be so angry that he would vomit blood. He was a dignified leader of the Noda survivor base, so it was fine that he was not taken seriously by others, but his death at this moment was also so unclear here. Bailan and Yi Hanayu teamed up to kill the intelligent zombie. Because the distance was too close and the intelligent zombie was too fierce, the two of them did not leave any survivors. Xia Bai was a little dumbfounded. The battleship's reaction was too great. He quickly stood up, and the first order he gave was to have Alpha cease fire. Despite this, in such a short time, the large area around Xia Bai and the others turned into a slaughterhouse, with blood everywhere, and the survivors moved out of the way. Watching this scene in horror, others don't know Genji. From the current situation, they can only see Xia Bai's bloody and ruthless nature. Although many people actually heard Chen Han's cry for action, no one was a fool and could figure out what the situation was. In fact, other survivors even tried to grab Xia Bai's battleship at that moment. The thoughts are unknown, but at this moment, everyone's hearts are filled with only palpitations and coldness. The situation was chaotic just now, but at this moment, it fell into a kind of spontaneous dead silence. Liu Bei didn't say anything before, but now he couldn't help but said, "Xia Bai, stop it." In everyone's eyes, the firing of the battleship was undoubtedly an order given by Xia Bai. Yi Tangmu stood further back, looking at Xia Bai and Yi Hanayu. His face also turned pale. He did not expect that Xia Bai was so ruthless and decisive, killing countless people in such a short time. Yi Hanayu looked at Xia Bai and didn't say anything. Instead, she smiled at him. This smile had many meanings, and Xia Bai also smiled. In the deathly silence, Xia Bai's smile looked particularly ferocious and terrifying, even a little bloody. At this moment, greater chaos suddenly broke out at the gap in the wall of the Fuchsin survivor base in front, and the situation there was getting worse and worse. Everyone's attention has been attracted here. Coupled with the chaos just now, the situation ahead can only get worse and people's hearts become more unstable. After all, the defense forces here are survivors who have not received much formal training. Fang's quality is incomparable. After surviving in the apocalypse for such a long time, he may be very capable, but he is not very willing to fend off zombies here alone. If there is chaos behind him, people will naturally be upset in the front. Xia Bai glanced at it, then turned his head and said, "Captain Liu, where is the loudspeaker I asked you to bring?" Someone in Liu Bai's team immediately brought it to Xia Bai. Xia Bai nodded, finished this thing, walked back, and climbed on top of the tank at the back that was too afraid to move due to the pressure of the battleship. He was standing on top of everyone. In this way, this people in the area can see him by looking up. Xia Bai first cleared his throat and glanced in the direction of the gap to confirm that it should be able to support it for a while, and then slowly said, "It seems that everyone has calmed down, so I will say a few words." Talk. Chapter 261. I'll give you a chance. Chapter 264. I'll give you a chance. The battleship was suspended above Xia Bai's head, with numerous guns and cannons, dominating the field like a hedgehog. The smell of blood that still lingers in the scene makes people even more frightened, and dare not speak. Xia Bai's eyes swept across the field. There were more than 10,000 survivors gathered in the Fuchsin survivor base. Most of the people here at this moment were combatants from Fuchsin. people with fighting ability and capable of protecting the survivor base. Of course, in the apocalypse, the armed personnel among ordinary survivors are basically the top people of a survivor base. Their model is different from the military. For example, Chen Han just now is the leader of a survivor base. He came to fight on his own point therefore, although the people gathered here now are not all of the Fuchs in survivor base, they are undoubtedly the top people in Fuchs in point. Xia Bai looked around, thought for a moment, and then said, I'm Xia Bai of any action. I thought of this moment, and everyone should know it without me saying it. I'm here to cause trouble, but I'm not an unreasonable person. A few days ago, I sent someone to ask if Fuchs needed help, but my people were obviously angry and unhappy here, so today I am. The first purpose of my coming is to cause trouble. Yi Han stood below, guarding the surroundings with Liu Bei and others. He raised his head and glanced at Xia Bai here, and couldn't help but said, is it really okay for him to say that, Bai? Lan glanced at her, but didn't say anything more. Xia Bai's voice still continued, in fact, there is nothing to say or explain about this. Anyang Mountain, am Anyang Mountain, and my people are my people. No matter who dares to touch me, everyone will have to pay the price for this, and I don't care who else is involved, because in my opinion, since Chen Han is the leader of Fuchsin, and you are all from the Fuchsin survivor base, then you are also his people. That is, my enemy. When Xia Bai said this, he changed the subject slightly. I know that everyone is a little afraid of me now, thinking that I'm a heartless lunatic, and that the zombie wave is about to massacre the city, but instead I came to take advantage of people's danger with such arrogance. At this juncture, I'm killing among the survivors. Yes, I'm such a person. I will retaliate, and do whatever it takes. In my concept, people in the apocalypse can only be divided into 3 categories, those who stand on my side and enemies. Passers-by, whoever touches my people is my enemy, but now, Chen Han is dead, and Fuchsin is about to be finished. I know that there are many things that you ordinary survivors do not know, and have not participated in. Fuchsin is now land without an owner, and will be engulfed by the tide of corpses. I give you a chance. Anyang Mountain is short of people. If you are willing to join Anyang Mountain, from today on, you will no longer be in Fuchsin. People, but people from Anyang Mountain are my people. Everyone below looked at each other in confusion, and one person said, you just killed our people, and now you want to win people's hearts. Xia Bai smiled and said, do I need to win people's hearts? Now the situation in Fuchsin is clear at a glance. Anyone with a brain can see that you have been forced into a desperate situation. If I disturb you like this today, I'm afraid you will be finished faster. And as long as I get on the battleship, I can leave with a pat on the butt, and I can even watch you being dismembered and eaten alive by zombies from the sky. Do I need to win the hearts of the dead? Xia Bai said, I said, Anyang Mountain is short of people now, and you are about to die. I will give you a chance to become a member of Anyang Mountain and be protected by me. Of course, you can also think that I'm buying people's hearts. I don't look down on me at all. As soon as Xia Bai said this, the people below started to commotion, and someone shouted, I want to join Anyang Mountain. As the first person exited, many people below also started shouting. Of course, many of them had observations and objections, but the number of people who wanted to join Anyang Mountain was actually very large. The sound is also difficult to convey. Point at this moment, most people are thinking the same thing. Point as Xia Bai said, Fuchsin is about to be doomed. Everyone can see that the military has not provided support for a long time. Now that Xia Bai's battleship has shown such strength, if he wants to survive, Xia Bai may be the Fuchsin survivor base. The only life-saving straw for the survivors. Moreover, Xia Bai just stood up for Yi Han, which seemed to these people to be unreasonable and domineering, even bloody and cruel, but this was from their perspective of being on the opposite side of Xia Bai. However, if he could also become Anyang Mountain people, wouldn't it be the best thing to have such a person who possesses powerful force, but protects his own shortcomings? However, some people maintained the minimum sense of reason and shouted in the crowd, there are tens of thousands of people in the Fuchsin survivor base. How are you going to take us out? Xia Bai raised his hand pointed at the corpse tied at the gap in the wall of the Fuchsin survivor base in the distance, and said, "Of course, rush out from here." As soon as Xia Bai said this, everyone below changed their expressions. Xia Bai did not give them a chance to speak, but said, "I will use the battleship to clear the way and tear a hole in the front of the zombie tide, and all you have to do is gather your team and follow me closely." As soon as he finished speaking, someone started shouting below, "After talking for a long time, you still let us take risks? How many people will die if you rush like this? I quit. Are you kidding us?" There was a commotion among the 7 people below, but Xia Bai had no intention of speaking again. Instead, he stood on the tank and looked at the group of people at his feet in silence. If it were a 5th level battleship, Xia Bai might be able to directly use the battleship to transport everyone out, but Fuchsin collapsed much earlier than Xia Bai imagined. The battleship was still far away from reaching the 5th level, but the survivors of Fuchsin had more 10,000 trees. The method, Xia Bai said, is the only way, and what he believes even more is that the survivors in Fuchsin cannot refuse, because judging from the current situation, it is impossible to defend the Fuchsin survivor base. Yes, the last choice for the Fuchsin people must be to rush out. Chen Han has thought of this plan before. With the weapons possessed by the Fuchsin survivor base, he can only rush out in this convection state, and with such the possibility of them escaping was almost zero if they tried to break through, but the presence of Xia Bai's battleship gave this method enough chance. The current situation in Fuchsin couldn't be simpler. Either rush out with Xia Bai and still have a chance of survival, or stay here and wait for death. Thanks to book friend 8,768,767 for the 10,000 reward. Another protector was born in this book. I noticed that some book friends said that the protagonist is a bit reckless, which is indeed a bit reckless, but in fact, the protagonist's behavior makes sense. It is also mentioned in the article, with Fuchsin the current scene is definitely not something Xia Bai can do by flying a battleship in the sky twice and mobilizing with 2 sentences. Xia Bai is indeed here to cause trouble, and he is indeed here to save the survivors in Fuchsin. The two are not the same conflict. Although Xia Bai is now rescuing survivors and establishing a survivor base, the article also keeps mentioning that Xia Bai's rescue has its own purpose. There is a shortage of people in any young mountain, but whether the survivors in Fuchsin are saved or not, it just depends on whether Xia Bai can control the survivor base of 10,000 people. There is also an original power system here, and they will never surrender to Xia Bai easily. Even if most of the survivors in the apocalypse are just grassroots, especially under Xia Bai knowing that Jihan Yu had suffered a loss here before. Although Xia Bai was short of people, he had to first make sure that the Fuchsin survivors he wanted to save could become his own, and he also had to make his position clear to people. Liangzhe also felt that Xia Bai's behavior may be a bit radical and brainless, but it is not unreasonable. Some book friends mentioned strengthening the protagonist. I'm considering this. The captain exchange option for level 4 battleships is a start, but the battleship is only level 4, and the protagonist strengthening cannot come so quickly. Herbal Tea has taken note of everyone's opinions and has its own thoughts. Herbal Tea also has some ill-considered aspects in its writing, but I will definitely continue to work hard, and I hope everyone can continue to support me. Chapter 262 Thank you. Chapter 265 Thank you. Not many survivors who can survive to this day in the apocalypse are fools. Although some people were clamoring at first, with Xia Bai's silence, they themselves also fell silent. Because everyone knows that this is their only chance to survive. They fell silent and focused their attention on Xia Bai above again. At this moment, Xia Bai spoke again and said, "Now, I want you who are resisting the zombies in front to withdraw. I want all of you to mobilize and let the survivors of the entire Fuchsin survivor base assemble into a convoy, waiting for the breakout." When the people below heard this, they couldn't help being slightly surprised and said, "If you remove all the people, wouldn't that mean that a wave of corpses comes in?" Xia Bai shook his head and said, "I'll stop them." The people below all looked surprised. And Xia Bai has already continued, "Since you have made up your mind to survive in death, I hope you will show your true fighting spirit. I only have one battleship, and I can't protect it. If I open the way, I can guarantee that more than one of you will be killed. 70% of the people were brought out of this dead place in the Fuchsin survivor base alive. But this has a premise, and this premise is that you want to live. You may not understand what I mean by wanting to live. I'm not talking about selfishness. For the sake of your own survival, pushing the companions around you into the zombie tide is a way to die. Now that we have formed a convoy, even if it is only temporary, we can only keep the formation unchanged and not collapse. Only then can you have the possibility of rushing out. In other words, if you want to survive, you must fight side by side with the people around you and never give up on any of your companions, because once the car formation is overwhelmed, you will die. If you kill all your companions, if you push it down to feed the zombies, you will definitely not survive the siege of the zombie tide, and I will never turn around to rescue anyone. Such people are not worthy of becoming people of any young mountain and mine. When the convoy is gathered, I will as a blade, I tear apart the tide of corpses with all my might, but I only give you opportunities, not salvation, and I will not save you. Not everyone in this world will have reinforcement arrive when they are in danger. This is the case before the end of the world, and in the end of the world, this will be even more true in the future. If you want to live, you must not only show your will to survive, but also show your personal appearance. This world is not a world where selfishness can lead to a smooth and prosperous life. After Xia Bai said these words, the tractor beam tower of the battleship in the sky swept down a beam of light and pulled Xia Bai up. The survivors below looked at each other for a moment and then suddenly took action. Everyone can understand the truth, but at this moment, when Xia Bai said these words, he felt a compelling sense of power. Everyone took action, but Xia Bai's battleship threw down beams of light in the sky, bringing Yi Hanyu and Bailan below onto the battleship. As for Xia Bai and the others, they would not board the battleship again for the time being. Instead, they want to assist and maintain the smooth progress of the situation in the Fuchsin survivor base. When they break out later, they do not intend to return to the battleship, but will choose to assist those ordinary survivors. Bailan said. Xia Bai and the others really want to help others. Xia Bai shook his head and said, they can be regarded as great soldiers. After Bincheng, even when they arrived at Anyang Mountain, they have never been idle, right? As he spoke, his eyes turned to Yi Hanyu over there and said, shall I pick up your parents? Yi Hanyu's mood at the moment was actually very complicated, especially towards Xia Bai. When she heard Xia Bai say such a sentence, she couldn't help but be stunned for a moment before she realized what Xia Bai was saying. After thinking about it, she nodded. To be honest, she wanted to hang her old Li Tao and the others down to dry, but they were her relatives after all, and everyone was taking action now. This was the real business. Son, Yi Hanyu is absolutely not willing to cause Xia Bai any more trouble. Xia Bai didn't think much and just said, why are you so distracted, Bai? Lan smiled and said, you said you were venting your anger on others, but you came over and shot them all to death. What is this? Xia Bai couldn't help but touch his head, looking a little embarrassed, and said, it's okay, today's reputation is out. Who will dare to touch us in the future? Xia Bai was talking, but he had already gone to the cab, because at this time, the survivors in Fuchsin below had begun to evacuate the survivors who were blocking the tide of corpses at the gap in the wall. If Xia Bai's battleship could not come up in time, if so, the zombie tide will probably pour in directly. When that time comes, there will be no need for the Fuchsin people to rush out, and the entire army will be annihilated from the start point. But at this moment, looking at Xia Bai's back, Yi Hanyu from behind suddenly shouted, Xia, ha. Xia Bai turned to look at Yi Hanyu. Yi Hanyu opened her mouth with an expression that said she couldn't say anything. Xia, that. Xia Bai frowned and said, what's wrong? Why are you acting so strangely today? What Xia Bai said was his true thought. Yi Hanyu usually has a carefree temperament, saying whatever she has to say, speaking outright without any hesitation, and without any scruples. But now, why can't she even understand what she's saying? Yi Hanyu's face turned red when she heard this. She held it in for a moment and then said, well, thank you. Xia Bai was stunned for a moment, then waved his hand. It's okay, then. This guy just turned around and walked forward. Yihan who looked at Xia Bai's back and couldn't help but feel a little stunned, and her face looked a little worse, but she didn't say anything else. But if anyone knew what she was thinking at this time, what is this? I'm telling you, thank you. It's okay. What's going on? Want to die? And soon, Yihan who had no time to think about these messy things, because soon, her family members were pulled up by Xia Bai using the battleship's tractor beam tower. Yihan was busy with her work before it was too late. When Bailan saw this, she just smiled and was busy with her own affairs. However, she was still cautious. Although she felt relieved about Yihan, Bailan, who had always been considerate of Yihan family, of course, you still need to pay more attention. At the same moment, Xia Bai's battleship was slowly turning, directly hitting the gap in the Fuchsin survivor base over there. The battleship's gun muzzle was turned, and its firepower was fully opened. Chapter 263 The Fleeing Army. Chapter 266 The Fleeing Army. Xia Bai's battleship is intercepting the gap in the wall of Fuchsin survivor base. The personnel who were originally stationed here had already retreated, and Xia Bai's battleship pressed directly up, hovering at a very low altitude. The battleship opened fire, directly suppressing the zombies in the entire direction. However, although Xia Bai's battleship's firepower was fierce, it also had drawbacks. While he was firing wantonly, the relatively intact walls on both sides were also being hit and damaged. Therefore, Xia Bai's battleship could only attack. It only has a temporary effect. The time Xia Bai fought for was enough for the survivors in Fuchsin survivor base at this moment. The people who have survived to this day in the apocalypse are no longer the kind of people who fled slowly at the beginning of the apocalypse. Everyone knows what the situation is in the Fuchsin survivor base, and now they have seen the only one who escaped. The opportunities are certainly more positive than the last. It didn't take long for a huge convoy to be pulled up, full of survivors from the Fuchsin survivor base. They gathered together, as if they were fleeing, but most of the survivors had panic on their faces. Even though they knew they were going to follow Xia Bai's battleship to break out, they were still a little frightened when faced with the huge tide of corpses and the pungent smell of blood that could be heard from a distance. Xia Bai inexplicably recalled the countless times in his previous life when he was mixed in such a large team. At that time, his thoughts were similar to those of these people. But Xia Bai didn't stay long. When the convoy behind was almost gathered, he directly controlled the battleship to move forward. This large wave of corpses was like paper in front of Xia Bai's battleship. When the battleship's cannon opened fire, it could clear a large open space in front. Even if Xia Bai didn't fire, it would directly crush it over. With the power and shield of the battleship, it is impossible for those zombies to intercept the battleship at all. After all, Xia Bai still took care of the survivors at the back. The battleship slowed down slightly and fired in all directions to clean up the zombies on the wings and at the front. Anyway, for Xia Bai, this was also a process of accumulating energy points. The Fuchsin convoy followed Xia Bai's warship steadily all the way. The number of survivors in Fuchsin was huge, so the convoy seemed lengthy. In the front position, it was pretty good to follow Xia Bai's warship. The pressure from the zombies was not great, but the pressure on the survivors in the middle and second half of the entire convoy was great. Zombies attacked them from several directions, and some even climbed crazily to the top of the car in front of them, fighting bloody hand-to-hand fights with humans. These survivors not only had to ensure that they could keep up with the convoy in front of them stably, but also to deal with these terrifying creatures who are not afraid of death and pain. However, what Xia Bai said before seems to have worked. Among the survivors in the second half, most of them are helping each other and fighting the zombies together. For those behind, if the convoy in front is destroyed due to the impact of zombies, if they are overwhelmed and cause the last person to stop, then the people behind will also be forced to stop, completely losing the chance to break out of the zombie tide. Xia Bai was also in the convoy. She knew that the pressure at the back might be greater, so she led her own people to guard the back of the entire convoy. The 8 people formed the 8 simplest firepower points and cooperated with the survivors behind to stabilize the situation. Compared with ordinary survivors, Xia Bai and the military special forces of the Dawn Squad looked professional and experienced. Even when shooting in a moving vehicle, they were still extremely stable, as if they were shooting on flat ground. Just like firing from above, each shot will definitely knock down a zombie point in this panic situation. Such people are undoubtedly the most able to stabilize the situation, and are even more useful than someone saying encouraging words. Therefore, the survivors picked up their weapons one after another, and cooperated with Xia Bai and the others to fight, resisting the zombies from behind. Point at this moment, they are not fighting for others, but fighting for their own survival. So everyone seems to be doing their best, because everyone knows that, if something goes wrong on their side, they will eventually pay the price in their lives. Yes, it can only be yourself. Xia Bai, as he said, once the breakout begins, he will never turn around to reinforce any position in the convoy behind him. He will only serve as the head of the sharp knife, and be responsible for rushing out of the front of the zombie tide. The process of breaking out didn't take long. For Xia Bai and his battleship, the process was almost stress-free. They rushed out steadily all the way. Behind them, Yi Hanai's father Yi Tongmu looked envious and surprised. Obviously I'm excited about the power of this battleship. As for why Xia Bai's battleship is so powerful, he is probably the only one who knows. Yi Hanai, who, on the other hand, looked embarrassed as she didn't know what to say. As Xia Bai rushed out of the corpse tide, the convoy behind him also roared out of the huge corpse tide, and fiercely penetrated the entire zombie tide. Although there were also a lot of losses, many people he died at the mouth of the zombies, and was completely left in Fuxin. However, the formation of the convoy never collapsed, and most of the survivors rushed out following the convoy. The huge convoy, like a long dragon, led by Xia Bai's battleship, crossed the small urban area outside the train station, rushed out of Fuxin City, and headed towards Anyang Mountain. And in this huge escape behind the convoy, the zombies surrounding the Fuxin survivor base were howling and desperately chasing after them. In the convoy of survivors at the back, many people climbed out of the car windows and looked at the dense and dark tide of corpses behind them. They also turned to look at the cold warship in front of them that was flying through the street at a very low altitude. They all felt a little incredible. Just now, they were trapped in the desperate situation of Fuxin survivor base. However, just a short time later, under the leadership of Xia Bai, they rushed out like a horse and completely escaped from Shengshan. Many people's faces showed the ecstasy of having survived the disaster, and now they felt sincere gratitude to Xia Bai. They seemed to have completely forgotten the scene of Xia Bai arrogantly destroying the scene at the Fuxin survivor base. The only tank in the Fuxin survivor base was also mixed in the convoy. The driver inside thought of Xia Bai's battleship, and suddenly felt that the value of his tall and powerful tank had dropped somewhat. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 264 The tank picked up. Chapter 267 The tank picked up. After rushing out of Fuxin survivor base, Xia Bai was in no hurry to return to Anyang Mountain survivor base. After all, Anyang Mountain was also being besieged by zombies at the moment, and there were nearly 10,000 survivors here, all of a sudden pouring in. In Anyang Mountain, Huang Qiulan and the others must be prepared to receive them first, especially the physical examination of all members. Xia Bai, the intelligent zombie who mingled among the survivors in Fuxin and attacked him, still remembers it clearly. Among the survivors there are also intelligent zombies, or infected people. Anyang Mountain wants to accept survivors, but it must also ensure that the survivors it accepts are safe and reliable. Of course, despite this, Xia Bai cannot guarantee that there will be no source of infection in Anyang Mountain. People will make mistakes. It's okay when the number of people is small, but once the number of people increases, just like the Changbei Mountain survivor base, even the military has no way to ensure the source of infection in the extermination survivor base. Anyang Mountain can only be as vigilant as possible. It's just dangerous. They drove east into a large deserted field and finally stopped and began to rest. However, their fleet was large in size and large in number, and its ability to attract zombies was also one of the best. Apart from anything else, it was the zombies from the Fuchsin survivor base, and many of them followed, sprinting towards us from a distance point. There is no need for Xia Bai to be responsible for these zombies. The Fuchsin survivor base has been able to exist in Fuchsin for such a long time and even has a tank. Although the weapons in his hands are still not as good as those of Xia Bai. There are no powerful weapons, but conventional there are still a lot of weapons, not to mention that everyone has a gun in their hand, but except for the kind of low-level people who are in the survivor base, most of the survivors still have their own weapons in their hands. At this moment, they spontaneously organize fire to defend against zombies. Xia Bai even noticed that there seemed to be a guy with the appearance of a leader emerging from here, commanding the survivors in Fuchsin to resist the zombies, but he was very careful, as if he was afraid that Xia Bai would look like just like how I dealt with Chen Han before. I just shot him to death. If he didn't like it. Xia Bai has no intention of taking care of this person. For the time being. Anyway, the survivors will be merged into Anyang Mountain. These matters will be handled by Huang Qiulan and the others. Xia Bai, the nominal supreme ruler of Anyang Mountain, is a hands-off shopkeeper. He was more concerned about the tank point the battleship stopped, and Xia Bai silently observed the outside through the holographic screen in the driver's seat of the battleship for a while before standing up, planning to go out and collect the tank point. When he came to the cabin behind the battleship, he saw a scene that surprised him a little. Yi Hanyu was sitting there in Zhenyu's paralyzed posture, while her parents, one on the left and one on the right, were beating her legs like servants. Moreover, this guy still had an extremely dissatisfied look on his face, as if you two were not my relatives. She looked like she was about to take action, and looking at her parents, they were still smiling without any dissatisfaction. Noticing Xia Bai coming out, her father Yi Tongmu stood up and smiled at Xia Bai. However, before Yi Tongmu could say anything about condoms, Yi Hanyu behind him gave a very obvious dry cough. Yi Tongmu glanced at Yi Hanyu behind him, showed a slightly embarrassed look to Xia Bai, and turned around again. He turned around and beat Yi Hanyu's legs, and Yi Hanyu, this guy, glared at Xia Bai fiercely, seeming to be inexplicably dissatisfied with Xia Bai, but then he seemed to think of what Xia Bai had done for him today, and the dissatisfied look on his face weakened a little, and the look on his face became more so it seems a little tangled and twisted. Looking at this scene, Xia Bai's mouth twitched slightly. To be honest, he wasn't quite sure what the situation was. Moreover, Xia Bai actually didn't even know that Yi Hanyu's parents were in Fuchsin. Therefore, although he felt that it was inappropriate for Yi Hanyu to do this, he still didn't say anything. After giving Yi Hanyu a silent look, with a strange look on his face, Di and Bailan went out to see the tanks. When Xia Bai and Bailan left the battleship, Yi Tongmu looked at the empty battleship and couldn't help but said, "My good daughter, Mr. Xia is so relieved," and leaves the battleship to us to guard. Yi Hanyu opened her eyes, glanced at her father with some vigilance, and said, "If you dare to have any bad intentions, don't blame me for carelessly annihilating your relationship." Seeing the cold light in Yi Hanyu's eyes, Yi Tongmu couldn't help but laugh twice, shook his head, and stopped talking. Yi Hanyu glanced at him, her eyes still somewhat wary. At the same moment, outside, Xia Bai, who was walking towards the tank with Bailan, suddenly sneezed. Bailan glanced at him and said, "The temperature has dropped, so wear more clothes." Xia Bai nodded and said, a little puzzled, "It's not too cold today." At this moment, Liu Yibei and others also came up to join Xia Bai and the others. Liu Yibei and his team lost another person. They were behind the entire convoy, although there were a large number of survivors to help them fight together. But after all, we are in the most dangerous environment and there is no way there will be no losses. Xia Bai nodded at her and led everyone directly to the tank over there with great momentum. The survivors who saw him along the way took the initiative to make way for him. Some were afraid of Xia Bai's previous massacre under the Fuchsin Wall, while some were not aware of what happened at that time. Xia Bai rescued them from the dilemma in Fuchsin survivor base, and they respected Xia Bai from the bottom of their hearts. As we get closer to the end of the world, although people will plot against each other more, they will also realize more deeply how difficult and incredible it is for others to lend a helping hand when they are in crisis. It didn't take much effort to collect the tanks. When they were in Fuxin, Xia Bai's battleship had been pressing on the tanks. The people inside the tanks had long been frightened, and they knew very well that their tanks might be the best among the survivors. He wanted to be the king and hegemony, but in front of Xia Bai's battleship, the entire tank would be blown up with one shot from the 380mm caliber main gun point. Therefore, when they heard Xia Bai's request, they handed over the tank without hesitation. Xia Bai directly asked Liu Bei and others to take over and be responsible for driving the tank back to Anyang Mountain Point. The acquisition of a tank was an unexpected surprise for Xia Bai. When the scale of the battleship expanded in the future, he would put this thing on the battleship and use it as equipment for the marine troops on the battleship. Chapter 265 Incorporation. Chapter 268 Collection. Xia Bai and his convoy rested for about 2 hours. The 10,000 person convoy of survivors was too big of a target in the wilderness. Zombies were attracted like moths to the flames, and it was not far from Fuxin. Xia Bai and the others rushed out all the way again. If this continues, it won't take long before their team is likely to be surrounded by a tide of corpses again. Therefore, after 2 hours, they had to leave here. It was Xia Bai's battleship that opened the way, leading the Fuxin survivors all the way to Anyang Mountain Point. There are a lot of zombies in the wilderness now, but most of them are scattered. In large scale, they are hundreds or thousands. For Xia Bai, such a number of zombies is not a trouble in the wilderness, and it is not a problem now. It might cause some real trouble to their team of tens of thousands of survivors. Of course, with the previous series of wars, the survivors in Fuxin also lost a considerable number of people, and the number has long been less than 10,000. But despite this, from a distance, their convoy is also extremely large, with various vehicles gathering together, like a modern refugee wave fleeing famine. Xia Bai's battleship led the way, and they drove directly towards Fuxin City. The process of returning to Anyang Mountain seemed to be much smoother. Although Anyang Mountain is now besieged by zombies, the situation is generally better than that in Fuxin. Xia Bai's battleship opened the way, and members of the Anyang Mountain Guard headed by Hao Zhuang also came out to greet them. When it got dark, these survivors were finally welcomed into the Anyang Mountain Survivor Base. At this time, the Anyang Mountain Guards are also busy. They are responsible for maintaining law and order, and assisting Huang Qiulan and the medical staff inside Anyang Mountain, to conduct complete physical examinations and registrations for these new survivors, so that they can be completely admitted to Anyang Mountain Point. And, because Xia Bai had said hello early, Huang Qiulan was already prepared, and the whole process seemed to be unhurried. As soon as Xia Bai returned to Anyang Mountain, he became the shopkeeper, and ran to rest. As for the tank, he also used his battleship to temporarily pull it back to the air raid shelter in the back mountain. Xia Bai was at leisure, but the entire Anyang Mountain became busy. Jing Xiangyang looked at the Wuang Fuxin survivors waiting for inspection in the night, and couldn't help but let out a breath and said, "There are so many people, when will they be inspected?" Cao Deming, who was standing next to him, took an eye at this kid, held his gun, and led his men forward, saying, "Stop talking nonsense and patrol well." Jing Xiangyang just slapped his mouth and followed closely. Cao Deming leads a team of 7 or 8 people. Teams like his are everywhere nowadays. His team is mainly responsible for emergencies. It is divided into fixed patrol routes. Once an accident occurs somewhere, if the situation arises, he and his people must immediately maneuver to maintain the situation. As an awakened person, Cao Deming is still very suitable for this kind of task. He led his people and walked forward for a while, then said, "Today's group of people is large in number, and there are also many infected people. From what I heard, 7 infected people have been found. No matter where they arrive, at this time, we all need to be more vigilant. If there is any large-scale infection wave in Anyang Mountain, or even some intelligent zombies get in and end, it will not be good for any of us." Jing Xiangyang quite agreed with this statement. He nodded and looked up at the slightly commotion crowd. Huang Qiulan's people and the medical staff were more distressed than the patrols, but few people complained at this time. On the contrary, most of them are conscientious and do not dare to make any mistakes. Because they have stayed in Anyang Mountain for a long time, the survivors here have realized that Anyang Mountain is definitely a rare peaceful place in the apocalypse. Anyang Mountain will have long-term peace and stability. For these ordinary survivors, it is undoubtedly a good thing. Therefore, no one dares to take this critical issue lightly. They are not doing things for Xia Bai or Huan, but for themselves, and of course they are doing their best. Jing Xiangyang was still a little unbalanced. Whenever he thought about this kind of thing, he always found it unbelievable, because in his opinion, Xia Bai was just a hands-off shopkeeper who only relied on one-handed battleships to dominate any mountain. However, he knew that Xiao Deming still admired Xia Bai very much, so he just thought about it to himself and did not say it out loud. And at this moment, a burst of chaos suddenly broke out not far from them. In a small temporary physical examination station, Xiao Deming changed his color slightly and immediately rushed in that direction with his men, squeezing into the crowd. Before he could see the situation, Xiao Deming was already talking about the many survivors who were running back in panic from the side. The tongue knows what happened before. There seemed to be a bitten survivor in front, who turned into a zombie. Due to negligence, he infected other people, creating 5 or 6 zombies, biting people everywhere like a mad dog. Xiao Deming felt a little anxious. In normal times, 5 or 6 zombies would not be a problem, but in this situation, it was dark and people were gathering together. If these zombies could not be dealt with as soon as possible, it would not take long. Over time, the number of zombies will expand rapidly. Therefore, Xiao Deming ran and rushed forward among the crowd, intending to seize the time to go for reinforcement and completely reverse the situation before it got worse. And at this moment, among the many survivors who were running away from him, a man accidentally bumped into Xiao Deming, who was running. The collision caused Xiao Deming's body to pause slightly, but the man only staggered. In a moment, he rushed into the survivors behind him without looking back. Xiao Deming is an awakener. An ordinary person might be knocked over if they collided with Xiao Deming like this, but that guy, he ran 2 more steps before he felt something was wrong. He turned around and took a look. However, there was chaos here. The person who just ran away didn't know where he had gone. At this moment, another shrill scream came from the position in front. Xiao Deming couldn't help but grit his teeth and temporarily gave up on this unusual situation. He took Jing Xiangyang and others under him and went directly to the scene. Went to help. Xiao Deming's timely arrival completely stabilized the situation, and Hao Zuan quickly arrived with more escort members to reunite the large number of Fuchsin survivors who had dispersed due to panic. The situation has stabilized once again. Chapter 266 Don't mess with Yi Hanyu. Chapter 269 Don't mess with Yi Hanyu. After rescuing the survivors who returned to Fuchsin, Xia Bai no longer took care of this matter, leaving it all to the current management of Anyang Mountain for overall planning, regrouping these survivors, and arranging accommodation for them. Of course, they also want to contribute to the construction of Anyang Mountain. Especially the Anyang Mountain Guards ushered in an unprecedented expansion after the Fuchsin survivors joined. Although the armed forces of the survivors in Fuchsin are far weaker than those in Anyang Mountain, there are quite a few survivors in Fuchsin who can fight. As the largest violent armed organization in the entire Anyang Mountain, the Anyang Mountain Guard certainly attracts these survivors to join. The scale has expanded unprecedentedly. However, the initial intention of these survivors to join the Anyang Mountain Guard was to become a member of a violent organization and exert power. This is also the normal state of the survivor base established by every ordinary survivor. Armed personnel are often like mountain kings. However, soon, those survivors who joined the Anyang Mountain Guard with such thoughts realized that they were wrong. Xia Bai had completely abandoned most things on Anyang Mountain, but for the Anyang Mountain Guard he has always been very concerned about the team. After all, in the future, a large part of the personnel on his battleship will be selected from the Anyang Mountain Guard. Xia Bai's original intention of establishing the guard was also to carry out militarized control. Although it was impossible to be as exaggerated as a real army, it was impossible for the members of the Anyang Mountain Guard to do anything powerful. Maybe they will be allocated more supplies than ordinary survivors, and they will also have the right to use various firearms and weapons, But bullying and suppressing other survivors is something Xia Bai will never allow, and these new ones have joined. If Fuchsin survivors want to become a full member of the Anyang Mountain Guard, they must undergo militarized training, and training the armed forces here in Xia Bai are absolutely different from other places. Even Hao Zhuang was dragged out for training by Xia Bai. Xia Bai got a tank, but he had no intention of returning it to the military or anything, so he asked Hao Zhuang to learn how to drive a tank with Xia Bai. Xia Bai didn't say anything about this, but showed a little dissatisfaction with Xia Bai's bold behavior in the Fuchsin survivor base. If Chen Han doesn't cooperate with you, you really plan to have massacre in the Fuchsin survivor base? Xia Bai's response was very direct and simple. Of course, Xia Bai couldn't help but glance at Xia Bai when he heard this. After realizing that what the man in front of him said seemed to be true, he said, "You are crazy. You have to let tens of thousands of survivors in Fuchsin follow Chen Han for such a trivial matter. Die." Xia Bai said, "Where is this crazy? Since you want to cause trouble for others, you must be ruthless and ruthless, so that others can see clearly. They will never dare to mess with me or touch my people again." Xia Bai saw the cold light flashing in Xia Bai's eyes and couldn't help but said, "Bandit style, if this was done before the end of the world, I'm afraid you are not a terrorist." Xia Bai said, "I'm a good citizen. Why should I be a terrorist when I have nothing to do?" Xia Bai was helpless towards Xia Bai, but in the end Xia Bai didn't really start the massacre, and Xia Bai didn't really get angry. Xia Bai asked her to teach Hao Zhuang how to drive a tank, and she didn't refuse. Although Xia Bai is from the military, she is currently doing her best at the Anyang Mountain survivor base. No matter what the matter is, as long as it seems good and helpful to the survivors here, she will not refuse. But similarly, if Xia Bai really massacred any survivors, Xia Bai would probably be the first to not deal with Xia Bai. However, Xia Bai is actually very clear-cut. When she was at the Fuchsin survivor base, Xia Bai was doing whatever she wanted, but Xia Bai didn't say much. She knew that she was an outsider in Anyang Mountain and interfered indiscriminately. Xia Bai could only backfire. She didn't go there that day to protect Chen Han, but to prevent Xia Bai from harming Caillou and kill all the survivors in Fuchsin. After this matter was settled, Xia Bai had almost nothing to worry about on Anyang Mountain. On the other hand, Yi Hanai's father, Yi Tangmu, is always sniping at him. This guy doesn't know why he's crazy, and he always tries to talk to him. At first, Xia Bai kept chatting with him for Yi Hanai's sake, but after a while, Xia Bai watched helplessly as Yi Tangmu was taken away by Yi Hanai, who came to kill him fiercely. He finally realized that this family, the relationship seemed not as good as he imagined, so he decisively retreated and avoided trouble with the policy of non-participation. He still remembers the times when Yi Hanai made mischief. However, Xia Bai was a little surprised that Yi Hanai's younger brother was also an awakened person. This is too much of a coincidence. All in all, after realizing that Yi Hanai's family situation seemed to be very complicated, Xia Bai also decisively retreated to avoid suspicion. Although he wanted to find Chen Yingying to ask what the situation was, in the end, Xia Bai still did not figure it out. Putting this heart of gossip into practice, he was busy with his own affairs. Honestly, Xia Bai does have his own things to be busy with, not to mention other things. Upgrading the battleship is Xia Bai's top priority. Therefore, when Xia Bai is busy, he really can't care about the situation here. However, perhaps because of the family reunion, Yi Hanai, who used to hang out all day long, was rarely seen outside. Xia Bai didn't pay much attention to it. The situation on Anyang Mountain returned to normal, and Xia Bai started leveling up again. During this process, many other survivor bases also asked for help from outside. Xia Bai would not refuse anyone who came. Often after receiving the news, he would directly drive his battleship to kill them all. Most of those survivor bases are not as large as the Fuchsin survivor base. Therefore, Xia Bai's rescue is much easier. However, as time goes by, the number of survivors on Anyang Mountain becomes smaller and smaller. Xia Bai even opened up a small air raid shelter area from the back as a living area, completely separating the air raid shelter dock area, where the battleship was located, from the survivors' living area. By August, there were more than 27,000 survivors up and down Anyang Mountain, making it the largest base of ordinary survivors in the entire Liao province. However, the zombies gathered in the area around Anyang Mountain where, as time goes by, the number becomes larger and larger. Chapter 267 Development. Chapter 270 Development. If there is a book, it will be long. If there is no book, it will be short. The situation in Anyang Mountain is stable and developing rapidly, and the situation in Xiangbei Mountain does not seem to be declining due to Nkisheng's big move in June. On the other hand, the intelligent zombies in Langjiang and Ji province started a bad process of one wrong step, and one wrong step after they were defeated by the Xiangbei Mountain survivor base in the Battle of Daxinganling, and a million zombies were killed. After the Battle of Daxinganling, intelligent zombies gathered multiple waves of corpses and launched a suicidal charge towards Xiangbei Mountain, but the results were extremely disastrous. Xiangbei Mountain has only one tactical policy for the incoming zombies: mass killing. In wilderness areas, the dense tide of zombies is a living target. Even if the zombies need to be separated from their heads and bodies before they can be truly killed, large-scale bombing can still have the same effect on the zombies as harvesting wheat. Massacre effect. Therefore, although the tide of corpses from the outside world to the Xiangbei Mountain survivor base has continued since the Battle of Daxinganling, it has not really advanced much distance in a day, and it has not been able to cause any substantial damage to the Xiangbei Mountain survivor base. Threats, let alone anything else. Nkei's reputation in the Xiangbei Mountain survivor base has risen to an unprecedented level. Because since he took complete control of the situation in the Xiangbei Mountain survivor base seems to have turned for the better. The trapped military troops in Daxinganling were rescued, and the zombies in Daxinganling were defeated. In the past nearly 2 months, the zombie attacks on Xiangbei Mountain also ended in failure. In front of Nkei, the zombies that once made Yang Wenchen so anxious seemed to be no longer a problem, and it became easier to deal with them. Therefore, Nkei's position in Xiangbei Mountain is becoming more and more stable. Yang Wenchen, who has not been seen since the June incident, is said to have reappeared in Xiangbei Mountain recently. Although he has not expressed any sympathy for Nkei's current situation, public support, but he no longer has the influence he once had. Among the survivors in Xiangbei Mountain, the Mutual Rescue Association has joined forces with other large-scale survivor forces in Xiangbei Mountain. In the past period of time, the survivor organization 13 Kings has been completely removed from Xiangbei Mountain. The Mutual Rescue Association, with the support of Nkisheng, it has become unprecedentedly powerful. The Mutual Rescue Association has a very deep foundation. In the past, due to the nature of the survivor organization, it has never really condensed into a large-scale force. It has huge influence, but no corresponding force model. But now, with the emergence of the Chuking radicals within the Mutual Rescue Association and the support of Nkisheng, the Mutual Rescue Association is gradually becoming one of the most powerful organizations of civilian survivors in the Xiangbei Mountains. Of course, this is the force of civilian survivors. Some unfathomable financial groups still maintain a certain silent official attitude amidst the changes in the entire Xiangbei Mountain. The more powerful there are, like the Zhejiang group, the more powerful they are. No matter how the situation changes, they just want to sit firmly in their positions. The situation in Xiangbei Mountain has stabilized. Of course, at least on the surface, the situation in Xiangbei Mountain seems to be unprecedentedly stable. However, the channels for Xia Bai to obtain information were limited. Although the people he sent could be considered to have opened up the situation, they did not come into contact with any core level after all. Since the Greater Kingan Mountains incident, the information between Li Jianbei and Xia Bai has also been thorough. Interrupted. However, according to the information obtained by Xia Bai, although the 37th Division also suffered certain losses, it was not injured, and Li Jianbei did not suffer any injuries during the battle. As for why Mr. Li no longer established contact with Xia Bai didn't know. However, Bailan gave a speculation, saying that Master Li probably did not want to involve Anyang Mountain, and hoped that in this way, he could indirectly cut off the connection between Anyang Mountain and Yang Wenchun's faction. so as to distance himself from the survivors' base in Bai Mountain. Any action can stay calm and develop steadily on its own point after all. Although Bai Mountain is powerful and Nkisheng can be said to be in control of the overall situation, it is the end of the world now, and Nkisheng has places beyond his reach. Moreover, Anyang Mountain is also a human survivor base, and its current scale is not small. As long as Xia, if Bai didn't show any follow-up contact with Li Jian Bai's group, Nkisheng wouldn't be so mad as to do anything to Anyang Mountain point. The current situation, after all, is the end of the world, an era of confrontation between humans and zombies. There are not many living people in the 3 eastern provinces. What's more, for military forces like Nkisheng, Anyang Mountain where ordinary survivors are entrenched is basically impossible. There is no need for Enki to take him seriously, or even regard him as an enemy point, but Xia Bai is developing steadily. For nearly 2 months, Xia Bai has been hunting zombies in the surrounding areas of Shengjing City and Anyang Mountain. Although the situation in the survivor base in Bai Mountain seems to be better than Xia Bai imagined, Xia Bai is indeed working harder. Prepare for urgent upgrades. Xia Bai didn't really care who was in charge of Bai Mountain. As mentioned before, although he once stood with Yang Wenshen's faction, what he wanted was actually the stable existence of Bai Mountain point. As long as Bai Mountain exists, the 3 eastern provinces will not fall, and Anyang Mountain will always be in an advanced state of development. On Xia Bai always felt that something was wrong. The intelligence returned from the Bai Mountain survivor base claimed that the intelligent zombies in Ji province and Langjiang province were in a state of retreat, and even foolishly used a large-scale zombie tide to directly attack the survivors by storming the military's survivor war zone. In contrast, the deployment of intelligent zombies in Lao province appears to be unprecedentedly cautious. The number of zombies surrounding Anyang Mountain is still increasing. With the current scale of the zombie tide, even if intelligent zombies do not deliberately guide them, zombies will continue to be introduced. The walls of Anyang Mountain are constantly being expanded. However, these zombies alone are obviously not able to truly threaten the Bai Mountain survivor base where warships are stationed. However, the intelligent zombies in Lao province have no intention of making any other moves. They are obviously still waiting for the opportunity to take over Anyang Mountain in one fell swoop. They are so cautious in taking down Anyang Mountain. So why are the survivors in Bai Mountain? The base seemed so aggressive when targeting the more powerful military. This is actually something Xia Bai has always been wary of. Chapter 268 Flattery. Chapter 271 Flattering. Xia Bai had no way of knowing what the specific situation was at the Bai Mountain survivor base, and there was nothing he could do. Of course, Xia Bai was not free enough to take care of Bai Mountain's affairs. His idea is as simple as ever. As long as Bai Mountain is not destroyed, there is no need for him to help. And he wanted to rule the 3 eastern provinces and even become the warlord of the entire northeast region. But this was not Xia Bai's goal. With the massive expansion of the population on Anyang Mountain, although the internal situation of Anyang Mountain has become a bit chaotic, in general, the various functional constructions of Anyang Mountain are gradually increasing. Xia Bai and Huang Qiulan's plan is to transform Anyang Mountain into a military-urban survivor base. Arming and living. This is also the most common survive mode in the apocalypse. Huang Qiulan's idea is to deepen this process, while Xia Bai's idea is to choose what he needs from the stable social structure of Anyang Mountain people. Xia Bai's establishment of Anyang Mountain was like farming. Now that the planting was almost done, it was time for Xia Bai to harvest the crops. The energy points of battleships accumulate more and more as time goes by, and the upgrade plan for level 5 battleships has been put on the agenda. The armed system of the 5th level battleship may not have a very powerful increase, but the size will expand again. Although it still cannot reach the scale of a battleship as large as a moon across the starry sky, Xia Bai will also have a real to the point of forming their own fleet members. He began to issue various requests to the already anxious Huang Qiulan. The entire Anyang Mountain is short of supplies. Xia Bai cannot be short of supplies. What Xia Bai wants is people. Xia Bai wanted a variety of people, including medical personnel, combat personnel, and even computer talents. Although Xia Bai didn't know exactly what the internal functions of the 5th level battleship were, he asked the stupid alpha to he made a list and handed it over to Huang Qiulan. Not only did he need people, Xia Bai also wanted to build some auxiliary and functional facilities that could be used in the battleship, as if he was going to build an aerial fortress regardless of whether the items in the list proposed by Alpha could actually be used by Xia Bai's warship. Xia Bai immediately asked Huang Qiulan to prepare it. This was the first time that Xia Bai used his so-called domineering skills on Huang Qiulan. That power Huang Qiulan had a black line on her forehead. Anyang Mountain is currently under construction. There are still zombies sieging the city outside. A large number of new survivors have poured in. The influx of forces has broken the original power structure on Anyang Mountain. Huang Qiulan is also in all kinds of troubles. Among them, Xia Bai needed manpower and material resources from her now, and she had to devote a lot of energy to deal with it. In the apocalypse, it is difficult to find talents for various special professions, but it is quite easy to find people who can fight. Because those who have survived to this day and have been incorporated into the Anyang Mountain survivor base, even the poorest survivors have some ability to fight and survive. The survivor base in the apocalypse is nothing more than a base for all people to be called soldiers. Therefore, the first thing Huang Qiulan did was to help Xia Bai recruit future combatants on the battleship. She and Hao Zhuang were jointly responsible for this matter and directly announced that they were recruiting Xia Bai's guards to fight with the battleship. Xia Bai's battleship is extremely famous in Anyang Mountain. Who here has not seen Xia Bai's battleship? Who doesn't know how powerful Xia Bai's battleship is? Moreover, who is Xia Bai? Although Xia Bai never intervenes in most routine matters on Anyang Mountain, like a hands-off shopkeeper, he and the group of forces he possesses are undoubtedly the most powerful force and backer on Anyang Mountain. Xia Bai it is to the Anyang Mountain survivor base, just like the military is to the Changbai Mountain survivor base. Being able to join Xia Bai's faction is what many people dream of. Therefore, when they heard that Xia Bai's warship was recruiting people, the capable survivors on Anyang Mountain became excited one by one, and they all wanted to join Xia Bai's side. However, Xia Bai's requirements for the selection of combatants on future battleships are very strict. Huang Qiulan has to be screened once, and Bailan and Hao Zhuang have to be screened again. They must not only have sufficient abilities, but also have good qualities. His character and background. Xia Bai didn't want a fire in the backyard to happen to his warship in the future. Xia Bai's warships were gradually upgraded, requiring more crew members and more functions. This was of course a good thing, but a good thing didn't just mean good influence. Therefore, although Xia Bai seemed very anxious about this kind of thing, he still had to be extremely cautious when actually selecting people. However, what surprised Xia Bai was that after the news that he wanted to recruit fleet members was completely released, some people that Xia Bai didn't expect came over and recommended themselves. For example, Xia. Less than half an hour after Xia Bai's news was released, Xia ran over on his own, carrying a crab that was absolutely rare in the apocalypse. Xia Bai was a little confused and said, "What the hell is this?" Xia smiled flatteringly and said, "This is a good thing brought by a group of survivors from the sea. The people below spent a lot of materials to honor me. No, when I saw this thing, I immediately thought share it with Mr. Xia." Xia Bai was a little suspicious and asked, "Isn't the coastal area full of mutant virus infections? Where does this thing come from? Are you sure it can be eaten?" Xia said, "Haha, I'm also murmuring, but since this thing has passed our security check, there should be no problem." Xia Bai twitched the corner of his mouth and said, "Okay, you can keep the crabs for yourself. I don't dare to eat them. Why are you looking for me? You might as well say it directly." Xia smiled and said, "I don't have anything else to do. I just heard that Mr. People are the most powerful in Anyang Mountain. Among the Anyang Mountain guards, my people are also the most powerful. Mr. Xia, if you want to pick someone, why not choose from my people? As long as you give the order, I, Xia, will be the first to ride through fire and water." Xia is a typical wallflower. When Xia Bai wants to recruit people, he will be the first to recruit Xia Bai. Xia Bai's mouth twitched, looking at the smiling guy in front of him. He didn't know what to say. Chapter 269 Level 5 Battleship. Chapter 272, Level 5 Battleship. The zombies were sieging the city, but it was quite stable on Anyang Mountain. Xia Bai also let go completely, accumulating his own energy points. To prepare for upgrading the 5th level battleship point, it takes longer to upgrade a battleship from level 4 to level 5 than from level 3 to level 4. Xia Bai had accumulated nearly 120,000 energy points in mid-August, but it was not until the beginning of September that Xia Bai's battleship was completely upgraded and reached the level of a 5th level battleship point. The entire upgrade process was carried out in the air raid shelter that Xia Bai later transformed into a shipyard on Anyang Mountain. During the upgrade process, Xia Bai completely sealed the place and kept guard here, appearing to be very careful. Of course, no accidents occurred during this process. Anyang Mountain was surprisingly stable, although there were more and more zombies gathering on the periphery of Anyang Mountain. As the number of survivors on Anyang Mountain increased, the number of Anyang Mountain guards also increased. It has already expanded many times compared to before. Coupled with the multiple expansions and heightening of the walls of Anyang Mountain, under normal circumstances, even without Xia Bai's battleship, it can still resist the zombies on the outside point. After running in the apocalypse for such a long time, Xia Bai experienced the feeling of steadily upgrading for the first time. It was just like playing the battleship game before the apocalypse. There was no need to worry about anything going wrong. While upgrading point on the day when the battleship was completely upgraded to level 5, Xia Bai was also extremely excited. As the captain of the battleship, he was the first to witness the huge changes in the battleship point. The most obvious appearance of a battleship is undoubtedly its size. The military air raid shelter in Anyang Mountain is already quite large. Xia Bai directly renovated it after taking over it. In order to facilitate the warships, a large area of open space was directly cleared. There is a large open space even when a level 1 battleship is placed in an air raid shelter. However, as the battleship spends 100,000 energy points to move from level 4 to level 5, the size of the battleship has expanded by 7 or 8 times. The length alone is from more than 20 meters to 150 meters. The width and height increased accordingly, filling the entire air raid shelter to the brim. It only takes 10,000 energy points to upgrade a battleship from level 3 to level 4, but it takes a full 100,000 energy points to upgrade from level 4 to level 5. The change is huge and undoubtedly normal. The overall shape of the battleship has also changed. At the 4th level battleship, the appearance of the battleship is still more like a hedgehog-like fighter, but at the 5th level battleship, it is more like a huge space battleship. The overall structure is a long and narrow streamlined structure, and the outer layer as a deck is still a cold and dark black, covering the battleship, as if there are no seams. It is one cold and powerful. The control room that was originally replaced by a simple driving position has become a real bridge inside the battleship. The main bridge is located at the tip of the entire battleship and has become a real control center, with the captain's position, battleship control position, radar position, the fire control position, and so on were all gathered in one place. Xia Bai walked into the battleship and found that the interior style of the front main bridge was similar to that in various science fiction movies. In addition, behind the battleship, there were a prepared command post. However, the area was very small, similar to the cab of Xia Bai's previous 2nd level battleship, and its functionality was far from sufficient. A 100-meter long battleship is actually not too big. The runway of Xia Bai and his university's playground is 400 meters long. According to the normal pace of human beings, a battleship of 150 meters is really not that big to walk back and forth. However, the internal space of the battleship appears complex and huge. The interior of the 5th level battleship, even the inner structure, is divided into 4 parts. The front bridge occupies a large area, but the main area of the battleship behind the bridge is split into 2 levels. The upper level is the area for human activities. Xia Bai walked in the winding corridor. After walking around for a long time, I took a general look at this area. The original medical room has been expanded. It has 2 medical equipment, as well as some conventional medical equipment and equipment that require manual operation. It has completely become a true mobile hospital has been built. Although it is not large in scale, the medical level of the battleship's medical cabin is enough to be regarded as top-notch and cutting edge. Unless someone is killed on the spot, as long as he can be sent in alive, there is a possibility of saving a life. However, level 5 battleships still do not have the ability to clean up zombie viruses. In addition to this, there are even more places such as confinement rooms and rest cabins in the battleships. However, the area of the 5th level battleship is still large. The confinement rooms are very small, and the rest cabins are simply like that to the status of a space capsule, but this is also a functional improvement point. In addition to this, the research laboratory inside the battleship has also been expanded, and its volume has increased. However, Xia Bai does not use much of this thing. At most, he uses Alpha to cooperate with the internal systems and data of the battleship, to help him analyze it. Calculate something. There is even a brand new intelligence system launched in the battleship. In the corners of the clean white battleship, and around various functional rooms, various small display screens can be seen. They are connected to a system that is semi-independent of the battleship. A set of life support assistance systems, controlled by a steward AI with a low level of intelligence, can not only help the personnel on the battleship do certain things that they find difficult, but also provide the captain with a second main body on the battleship. Surveillance mode. Beyond security systems, the functional modules of the battleship's living area have changed significantly, but there is actually nothing new. Things like the ecological cabin that Xia Bai has been waiting for have not yet appeared. On the lower deck, there are all the main structures of various warships. The material storage module, weapon storage module, energy module, engine module, and electronic system module within the battleship are all on the lower deck. The upper deck of the battleship looks bright and tidy. The lower deck feels like an industrial factory in a steampunk world. Although it is well organized, it always gives people a mechanical feel. In addition to this, the fourth internal structure of the battleship is located at the rear end of the entire battleship, because the space of the battleship is still valid. This is the parking place for equipment and the combat preparation room, and it is also the location of the rear main hatch of the battleship. Although the 5th level battleship still seems a bit petty compared with those real space battleships, this is the state that is most like a battleship among the 5 levels and 5 forms. Since Xia Bai obtained the battleship, Captain Xia Bai wandered around the battleship and felt very satisfied. Chapter 270 Captain, please have tea. Chapter 273, Captain, please have tea. The internal structure of a 5th level battleship can be said to be complex, or it can be said to be relatively simple. After the bridge in the front, the battleship is divided into 2 levels. The upper and lower decks are divided into 2 levels of deck space. In the second half of the battleship, the 2 separated decks are once again merged into one maintenance space. The corridor inside the battleship is circular. At the bridge, you can reach the upper or lower deck through a simple internal elevator, which is a complete battleship control room. Xia Bai wandered around the battleship for a long time, inexplicably feeling some kind of indescribable feeling. For Xia Bai had finally gained something from hunting zombies in the past few months. He sat contentedly in the luxurious captain's seat for a while, and even had a few words with Alpha. Although, according to the description of the system, with the upgrade of the battleship, Alpha's intelligence level has also improved, but through a few simple conversations between Xia Bai and Alpha, he really didn't see what kind of improvement in intelligence level this Alpha had. As always, it gives people a stupid feeling. If there was any change in Alpha, it would undoubtedly be that this guy was going to cause trouble. The captain's seat of the 5th level battleship is no longer the driver's seat. Xia Bai can really sit here and give orders, letting artificial intelligence or their human subordinates he recruits to help him complete the control of the battleship. But in the captain's position, Xia Bai can use the intelligence system on the battleship seat to instantly take over the operation of any functional module on the battleship without moving even half a step. Although the captain's seat looks like a luxurious sofa, but in fact, this sofa is built with various electronic systems. On the armrest on one side, the battleship even thoughtfully designed a dessert and beverage supply port, which can be used as long as Xia Bai needs it. The seat directly combines with a cup of coffee or something to eat. Xia Bai was chatting with Alpha, and the artificial intelligence used this thing to directly hand Xia Bai a cup of barley tea. Captain, please drink tea. Barley tea can whiten the skin. Xia Bai really didn't expect Alpha to come up with this. He picked up the cup and took a sip. Listening to Alpha's detailed talk about the efficacy and benefits of barley tea, he suddenly remembered something. Alpha, in the battleship there is no barley tea at all. What do you make it with? 1 energy point can make a cup of barley tea. When Xia Bai heard this, he immediately asked, is this stuff made with energy points? Dear Captain, that is indeed the case. The corners of Xia Bai's mouth couldn't help but twitch. Only then did he remember that he seemed to have given Alpha permission to use a small amount of energy points before. At that time, he was outside and wanted Alpha's help in building something with a battleship, so he assigned the permission to him, but he never had it. Take back. 1 energy point is nothing to Xia Bai, but why would he spend 1 energy point drinking barley tea for beauty and beauty? Might as well have a cup of coffee. Alpha was still chattering, but Xia Bai had already stood up. He didn't have much hope for Alpha's intelligence system, and he didn't expect Alpha to be able to talk to him about being a ship girl, so he didn't get hung up on such trivial matters. The battleship has only reached level 5, and Xia Bai still has a lot to do. He just wandered around a lot inside the battleship, just to figure out the internal structure of the battleship. And for this battleship, what Xia Bai needs most is undoubtedly still a weapon system. First, there is the electromagnetic shield module of the battleship. Although this thing is not an offensive thing, it is not intended to be part of the weapon system. It is even more effective than some cannons. The battleship reached level 5, and the electromagnetic shield module was also upgraded. Alpha listed a bunch of data for Xia Bai that Xia Bai couldn't understand at all, but in general, the energy required for Xia Bai's shield, the supply has increased, but the defensive capabilities have been significantly improved compared to the previous level 4 battleships. The shield module is now located directly above the main body of the entire battleship, half embedded in the interior of the battleship, and completely integrated with the original solar cell module that can be extended from the inside at any time. Of course, the energy that current solar panel modules can provide to the shield is far from enough to maintain the normal operation of the shield. The main reliance is on the increase in output power accompanying this battleship upgrade. The battleship core energy module. For some reason, Xia Bai realized that the battleship's shield had been increased, and the first thing he thought of was to start the battleship rolling in the zombie tide, directly crushing the zombies. It is estimated that only Xia Bai can embrace the rubbish idea of using the size and shield of a battleship to crush zombies in Xia Bai's view, although this method is a bit barbaric and not worthy of the title of tall battleship. The battleship plus shield can crush zombies quickly and with high degree of damage, and it does not consume so many energy points. For Xia Bai, it can be said to be the most economical and cost-effective way to kill zombies. Of course, for Xia Bai, the most important thing is that this method does not consume many energy points. In addition to this shield, the battleship's other weapons have also been upgraded. 3 new 25mm caliber automatic cannons were added to each side of the battleship. They are usually semi-embedded in the inner wall of the battleship. Once the battleship is activated, these turrets will extend out and fire directly on the battleship's side. At the front end, there are also 3 triple-mounted 25mm caliber automatic artillery turrets that can move 360 degrees. However, with the complete upgrade of the battleship, one function has been lost. Before, Xia Bai could directly move the weapon system up and down, and the muzzle could move to various positions on the battleship. But now there are many functions on the 5th level battleship. Most of the turrets and turrets themselves are fixed. Even if they can be moved, the range is limited. It is impossible to do whatever you want like Xia Bai's previous 3rd level battleship. However, the weapon system of the 5th level battleship does not need this function. In addition to these 5 25mm caliber automatic cannons, other weapons on the battleship have also been enhanced. The original immersive 380mm caliber main gun of the 4th level battleship has been changed into a 2-gun. The secondary battery is located at the front of the battleship in the form of a fort. It is directly controlled by the weapon control system inside the bridge. It can be fired by personnel. With Alpha 4 fire control guidance, the accuracy can be greatly improved. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 271 Electromagnetic Gun. Chapter 274 Electromagnetic Gun. Today, on the battleship, a 2-unit 380mm caliber gun and a 3-unit 155mm caliber turret are placed front and rear on the battleship point. The central main gun position of the battleship was replaced by an electromagnetic gun point. The total length of the barrel and main body of this electromagnetic gun is 100 meters. The muzzle caliber is 50 millimeters, and the muzzle kinetic energy can reach 20 megajoules. The entire turret is located inside the main body of the battleship. It is a cannon that cannot be adjusted freely by itself. The main gun needs to be adjusted by adjusting the position of the battleship and adjusting the firing angle. When it is not activated, it is in an immersive hidden state, and it will only show its fangs. When it is activated, this thing's strike range is extremely long and powerful, and the kinetic energy shells it fires are relatively cheap. It can be said to be the first true electromagnetic weapon on a battleship, but similarly, when this thing fires, it consumes a lot of energy underestimated. However, in Xia Bai's opinion, this thing seems to be of little use for the time being. Using this thing to shoot zombies feels like using a cannon to shoot flies, but in Xia Bai's opinion, this thing is definitely useful. The battleships are gradually becoming stronger, and the tools and weapons they possess are also evolving towards higher levels of combat. In addition to this small diameter electromagnetic gun, the battleship also added a new weapon module, which was a heavy-duty torpedo launcher. However, Xia Bai took a look and found that the torpedoes he could build now were basically it is a conventional thing. Even so, the power of this thing cannot be underestimated. Although things like torpedoes are difficult to hit, they also have heavy firepower and the power of a large fish. They are far more powerful than Xia Bai's heavy artillery or even missiles, and the torpedo launchers used by warships are faced with space wars. Although the level of the launcher body is still very low end, its own launch speed is far beyond that of torpedoes on Earth. And this thing seems good for blowing up zombies. In addition to the two newly added weapon modules, the original macro missile array still exists, located under the oblique armor layer on the right side of the battleship. The armor at that position can be raised to launch small missiles at any time. Unlike other different from the changed weapon modules, the specifications and power of this macro missile array are still the same as those at level 4. However, Xia Bai discovered that the 30mm caliber artillery that had been following the battleship before had disappeared. It seemed that it had been banned directly because of this upgrade. That 30mm caliber cannon followed Xia Bai for who knows how long. When the battleship was at a lower level, it was the only firepower platform on Xia Bai's battleship. Now it has been cancelled directly due to the update iteration. Xia Bai, there is always an inexplicable sense of nostalgia. Although the current battleships have expanded in size, they still appear a bit crowded. Of course, generally speaking, level 5 battleships have been greatly improved not only in terms of size, but also in all other aspects. Functionality and firepower. Every change in this warship is moving closer to real space combat. Some of its features might not be that effective in fighting zombies, but in Xia Bai's opinion, those are things he must use when fighting alien creatures in the future. But this is still not enough. Level 5 battleships are still not enough. Although the battleship has reached the 5th level and even has electromagnetic guns, things like electromagnetic guns are actually nothing. On the Earth, various countries have already done research and results. The alien creatures that will come to the Earth 3 years later, if it could be blasted through with these conventional weapons, then Shenzhen, the magic city known as the Star of Asia, which gathered the elites from all of Asia at that time, would not have been easily wiped out by the attack of alien creatures. The battleship still needs to be upgraded, and I still need to become stronger. Looking at the battleship in front of him, Xia Bai felt infinite fighting spirit. At this moment, what he was thinking about was a higher level 6th level battleship or even a 7th level battleship. It takes 1 million energy points to upgrade from level 5 to level 6, and it takes 10 million energy points to upgrade from level 6 to level 7. Continuing to upgrade means that Xia Bai has to invest more manpower, material and resources, and spend more time, but the need to upgrade these energy points also means Xia Bai's battleship will be upgraded every time it is upgraded in the future. Everything will undergo more earth-shaking changes again and again. Upgrading a battleship is not a transaction, and the energy points required to make items to upgrade a battleship are not so-called money. It takes 20 energy points to build a cannon shell, and the consumption of these 20 energy points is actually the actual use of let's create the missile itself. And the same goes for upgrades. When upgrading from the first level to the second level, 100 energy points are needed. These 100 energy points are all used to transform and upgrade the warship. The amount of energy points invested directly means how far the warship can be upgraded. Therefore, the investment of 1 million energy points in the transformation will definitely bring greater changes to the battleship. Of course, now I think these are all imaginary. 1 million energy points cannot be conjured out of thin air. If you want to accumulate this amount of energy points, you still need to accumulate them step by step, and accumulate them bit by bit. Xia Bai remembered that when he was at level 4, the information related to level 5 battleships that he could browse mentioned that level 5 battleships could build a simple individual energy collector. If the 5th level battleship can really do this, then this means that Xia Bai can gather energy points for himself through other channels, even more flowers. In that way, Xia Bai can collect energy points. The speed will be greatly improved. Therefore, after Xia Bai stared at his 5th level battleship outside for a while, he returned to the inside of the battleship and wanted to study more manufacturable items that would be opened up to the system after the battleship reached the 5th level. After the battleship reaches the 5th level, the item manufacturing equipment also has an independent cabin, with an intermediate manufacturing facility as the core, supplemented by 5 low-level manufacturing equipment, and in various other locations inside the battleship. There are many small and auxiliary item manufacturing facilities, such as the device that delivered tea to Xia Bai before. The existence of these small manufacturing facilities is undoubtedly provided to improve the living environment and convenience inside the battleship. Of course, in the battleship, no matter who wants to use these things, Xia Bai must first grant permission. Otherwise, no one can use anything in the battleship. The internal security system of the 5th level battleship has also been greatly improved. Chapter 272 Energy Collection. Chapter 275 Energy Collection. The interior of the 5th level battleship is now a self-contained system. There is an internal security monitoring and detection system at key locations in the department. There are even simple weapons embedded in the walls. Once the presence of unauthorized persons or certain people is detected, if you try to use something beyond your authority, the battleship's alarm will be triggered immediately. In other words, now, if anyone wants to board Xia Bai's battleship without Xia Bai's permission, the battleship's internal warning will be triggered immediately. As for this security defense level, Xia Bai could actually lower it through system adjustments on the battleship. Of course, Xia Bai's mind was not on this kind of thing at the moment. He sat down comfortably in his captain's seat, shouted out the system list in front of him, and began to browse it by himself. Previously, when the battleship was at level 4, the captain's privileged manufacturing list was enabled for the battleship. Since then, this function bar has been directly placed at the top of the battleship's manufacturing list. Therefore, when Xia Bai opened the manufacturing list, the first thing he saw was this privileged manufacturing list. As the battleship reaches level 5, the number of things that can be built in the captain's privileged area also increases. The first thing that caught Xia Bai's eyes was something that surprised him slightly. Individual hand-built energy shield. Introduction. After being charged, this item can activate a stable oval electromagnetic field shield in a short period of time. The shield is oval in shape, 1.53 meters long and 70 centimeters wide. Cost: 1000 energy points. Remarks: this item is a special item. It is equipped with the captain's genetic identification lock. Only the captain can manufacture and use it. Abnormal use and destruction will cause the item to enter the self-destruction program and completely lose its function. Hold the grass. Personal shield. Xia Bai's eyes lit up slightly when he looked at this thing. With this thing and the previous gravity grenade, Xia Bai himself could undoubtedly be armed completely. However, judging from the current situation, Xia Bai actually has few opportunities to participate in the battle. He is the captain of the battleship, and he occupies a high position among the battleships. Even if he wants to go out and do something, Bailan will be the first to disagree. Moreover, with the battleships present, and the battleship's strength crushing him, Xia Bai no longer had the need to run out and fight alone. However, these things also have meaning. After all, the battleship is just a foreign object. Although Xia Bai is the captain and the real controller of the battleship, Xia Bai will definitely encounter dangers that need to be separated from the battleship to fight and solved with his own flesh and blood. Although the cost of 1000 energy points for this thing is a bit expensive, in Xia Bai's opinion, it is very necessary to get 1 point in addition to this individual handheld shield. There is another item in the inventory that can be created with the captain's privileges. Star Battleship Crew Contract. Introduction. This item is a contract to assist the captain in recruiting crew members. This item is divided into two parts. An electronic employment contract, which only has a conventional contract function. An embedded chip bill for personal use. This chip is a supplementary clause to the former electronic contract part. The chip bill will enter the entire text content of the former electronic employment contract and play a role after being implanted in the central nervous system of the employed crew. The chip can automatically identify the employed crew's conduct information and compare it with the contract content of the electronic contract. Once the behavior information of the hired crew member shows a violation of the contract, the chip bill will determine that the hired crew member has breached the contract and will respond accordingly. According to the hired crew member's breach of contract status, report it to the central main system of the battleship and impose varying degrees of punishment, such as limiting their mobility to killing their brains on the spot. If the captain does not take the initiative to remove the chip recipient host will die on the spot. Cost: 401 energy points. Remark 1. This item is a functional special item. Only the captain can create, authorize, and use it. Use of this item by non-captains will cause it to be ineffective and trigger a self-destruction process. Note 2. The two parts of this item have different costs. The cost of the electronic contract is 1 energy point. The cost of the chip bill is 400 energy points. This is Xia Bai really didn't expect that a 5th level battleship could actually create such a thing for him, and even he was shocked. Isn't this a contract, and it relies on electronic processes to ensure its execution. The cost of this thing is not low, but having this thing means that Xia Bai can have absolute control over the crew members he has recruited. The monitoring mode of this chip is even more useful than human monitoring. Anyone who dares to have a different intention will be strangled on the spot by the chip that monitors him at all times. Moreover, with the current technological power of survivors and humans, it would be difficult for ordinary people to have any means to block and destroy this chip, and it would also be difficult to block Xia Bai's surveillance in a curved manner. Of course, there are also problems with this chip. In today's era, even in the apocalypse, even if Xia Bai explains the function of this chip, people may still be resistant to implanting this chip. But in Xia Bai's opinion, this thing will definitely play a considerable role in the future, but it must be accepted in a more peaceful way that can be accepted by more people. The two new things in the captain's privilege column were quite useful to Xia Bai. Xia Bai glanced at it briefly and, without saying anything else, directly ordered Alpha to activate the manufacturing facilities on the current battleship and start first. To create these two things, one and the same, we need to create two samples first. After that, Xia Bai moved his eyes downwards and began to browse downwards. The manufacturing list of the 5th level battleship has more items than the 4th level, and it is dazzling. Of course, Xia Bai couldn't find it if he searched one by one. He was not in a hurry to look at other things, but started searching directly. First, he searched for all the items on the 5th level battleship. We will wait until the individual soldier energy collection device that can be manufactured is developed. Soon, Xia Bai found the item and began to read the description of the item. Low-level individual energy collection device. Introduction. Carrying this item can help non-warships and warships collect energy points by destroying energy items or collecting high energy items. Cost: 300 energy points. Note, this item can be carried by anyone, but its use requires authorization from the captain, and auxiliary items need to be made to recover the energy points accumulated by the device. Chapter 273 New functions and new items. Chapter 276 New functions and new items. The price of 300 energy points is actually not too high, but if Xia Bai wants to mass produce this thing and let others, or even find a way, to let the military use this thing to help him hunt zombies, then what is needed? There will be many kinds of energy collection devices. Once the number increases, the energy points required will undoubtedly increase with the tide point, but the value of making this thing is undoubtedly very high. With 300 energy points, as long as it is used properly, it is not impossible to make back the money or even make a lot of money from this thing point. However, now that the battleship has just been upgraded, Xia Bai only has less than 20,000 energy points left on hand. Moreover, he has quite a lot of things to do now, and there are many places where he has to spend energy points. It is impossible to spend these energy points. All the money was spent on building this device point. In addition to these things, the 5th level battleship also opens up many other things that Xia Bai can use. For example, the upgraded version of the HIE fighter built by the previous 4th level battleship is a type swarm drone. This drone carries more powerful weapons than the previous model, but is smaller in size. Overall, the performance of the drone has been improved, and it can even be connected to the human brain through a specific device, allowing people to remotely control the drone like playing a VR game, achieving unmanned tasks in a highly immersive state. Drive point. Of course, this new drone can also be controlled by Alpha, and this drone can be parked in the current rear warehouse of the battleship. At the same time, there are plug-in equipment on both sides of the battleship for this purpose. A fighter aircraft is attached. In addition to combat type drones, various other unmanned mechanical equipment also appear in the item manufacturing list open to 5th level battleships. Xia Bai glanced at the small scale robots for land reconnaissance, fire control, etc. This time, he could create as many as 12 types of unmanned robot equipment. There were 3 types in the sky, which were used on land. There are 9 types of functions. Most of the combat models are regular models equipped by the military. However, there is one type that makes Xia Bai feel a little pained. Intelligent cleaning robot. Introduction. This robot can help keep indoors and ships clean, tidy, and new. The equipped radar system can scan debris and dirt within a radius of 10 meters and clean it in time. It is an ideal choice for going out and traveling at home. A necessary choice for murder and arson. Cost: 250 energy points. Note, this robot has no attack function. Xia Bai looked at this thing, and for some reason, he immediately remembered the types of robots that were very popular many years ago, such as sweeping robots, smart robots, and so on. All in all, the items that can be manufactured by battleships are still all kinds of strange. They are not only limited to combat, but can also be manufactured in various other aspects and fields. Xia Bai browsed randomly, and even found a strange food point Mapuro composite functional energy block. Introduction. This item is a regular ration for Mampuro people. One energy block can ensure the energy intake required by a Mampuro person within 24 hours. Under the same condition, one energy block can provide a normal adult human the amount of energy required to move during 288 Earth hours. Cost: 50 energy points. This thing, looking at these introductions, Xia Bai's mouth twitched, and he was a little confused. What is a Mampuru? This was the first time Xia Bai saw the name of an alien species in the list provided by the Battleship System, and he was somewhat curious. Xia Bai even sent an inquiry to the system and asked if the system had any database or something where he could check and query information related to space creatures beyond the Earth. The system also responded immediately, "Dear Captain, I'm sorry, the information you want to query has no record in the system." The corners of Xia Bai's mouth couldn't help but twitch. There is no record in the system. Where did these things in the manufacturing list come from? However, after getting along with the system for such a long time, Xia Bai also understood that if the system said no, then he would not be able to find out, no matter how he asked. Therefore, Xia Bai could only put it aside for the time being and continue to ask. Browse the item list below. There is a dazzling array of items that can be manufactured by the battleship. It has exceeded tens of thousands as early as the 3rd level. The items that can be manufactured are included in various fields. If Xia Bai looked at them one by one, he would not be able to finish them all in one day. He also did not look at everything. Xia Bai just glanced slightly at the classified sections, where daily necessities and sundries were located. When he saw anything new or novel, he paid more attention and quickly passed by. Xia Bai paid special attention to something similar to the strange food before, but unfortunately, except for the Mapuro composite functional energy block, there were no other items linked to alien creatures. What surprised Xia Bai was that the low-level energy module he had been able to create at level 3 had finally unlocked a higher level energy module at level 5. This energy module required 1000 energy points. Is also a pure energy mode, which can be used as an emergency energy source for the battleship, to be replenished through the auxiliary energy supply module when the battleship reactor fails. This is also a useful thing. With the upgrade of battleships, the low-level energy module can play a very small role in the 4th level battleship. Once the reactor fails, the 2 secondary chemical fuel and energy modules will. It is even difficult for the energy supply module to maintain the normal operation of the warship. As for the newly added torpedo weapon module of the battleship, the corresponding weapon building has also been unlocked in the battleship. The torpedoes that Xia Bai can make are also complete, including heavy, medium and light. There are many types, including the most basic explosive torpedoes, and even further cloud bombs, etc. Of course, the power of these torpedoes varies, and the cost is also different, and warships can also create a heavy directional pulse torpedo, which is a weapon of war used to disable electronic devices. Of course, in Xia Bai's opinion, this thing is of little use for the time being. Intelligent zombies rarely have high-end weapons, let alone electronic facilities. Xia Bai can't be crazy enough to use this thing to bomb Changbei Mountain Point, but this thing definitely has the meaning of existence. In the not too distant future, this kind of electromagnetic pulse torpedo and even the electromagnetic gun currently mounted on the warship will be able to play an unimaginable role in the battle against future alien creatures' arms. Chapter 274 Xia Bai is in a daze. Chapter 277 Xia Bai is in a daze. August 7, 2019, 1800 hours. Any ancient canteen. Hey, what's your expression? Bailan came over from the side, put the dinner plate on the table, sat in front of Xia Bai, and looked at Xia Bai. Xia Bai was frowning and picking at the fried sweet potatoes on his plate. He was mainly thinking about 2 things at the moment. The first is energy points. For Xia Bai, energy points are money. Days without energy points are undoubtedly painful days. And just today, after Xia Bai browsed the entire 5th level battleship, Xia Bai felt like a double 10. Like a little girl who frantically emptied her shopping cart, she spent all the more than 18,000 energy points left in her hand in one go. Make everything that is useful. This was the only thought in Xia Bai's mind at that time point. But when all the energy points were spent, even if the things he made were indeed useful, Xia Bai still felt a sense of emptiness that was uncontrollable in his heart. He looked at the thin one left on his battleship's energy point data panel, thinking that he had to save 1,000,000 energy points to reach level 6, and suddenly he felt an indescribable despair feeling coming. This feeling is the same as that feeling of spending the entire month's salary at the beginning of the month and having no savings. Xia Bai felt that he might be in a financial crisis. Besides that, the second thing that Xia Bai was a little worried about was the air raid shelter may need a second expansion and renovation. The 5th level battleships have already filled the main area of the air raid shelter. How can the 6th level battleships be filled in? Of course, the main reason why this happened was because Xia Bai divided a small half of the area and part of the air raid shelter to the survivors at that time. Xia Bai really didn't expect that his battleship could reach such a level at level 5. Although Xia Bai knew that level 5 battleships would undergo earth-shaking changes based on the way the battleships had been upgraded, Xia Bai thought that this time a battleship can reach a length of 50 or 60 meters when fully stretched, and only level 6 can reach its current scale point. However, this time, Xia Bai obviously underestimated the growth of the battleship. Although the length of a 5th level battleship at 150 is still not huge, and the various facilities added are like a hedgehog, it is still a battleship. It has been upgraded to its largest state so far, and if this situation continues to develop, won't the 6th level battleships have to be 5 to 600 meters or even thousands of meters in size? A battleship like that might be the behemoth that stretches across the sky, right? But, if the 6th level battleship is really that big, Xia Bai's expansion of his air raid shelter seems to be of no use, so where should level 6 battleships be upgraded? Where can it fit such a large volume and still ensure safe upgrades? Aren't level 7, 8, etc. after level 6 all trouble? Xia Bai was happy when the battleship reached level 5, but he also discovered a series of problems and fell into the embarrassment of having no money and no land point. Therefore, Xia Bai was sitting in the corner of the cafeteria, plucking the things on the plate in a daze. It was not until Bailan sat over that he came back to his senses. Xia Bai glanced at Bailan. Bailan's dress was as smart as ever, but she seemed to have put on makeup and light-colored lipstick. She no longer looked like the sloppy look she had when she was escaping in the Ice City. Xia Bai said, "I didn't think about anything. I was just in a daze." Bai Lan glanced at him, smiled, and said, "You must have been in a daze for a long time. When I just came in, I saw you sitting here without moving your chopsticks. You were pulled by that girl Chen Yingying and talked bitterly for a long time. I brought you the food, but you still didn't use your chopsticks. Why is the food in the cafeteria not delicious?" When Xia Bai heard this, he couldn't help but glance at the dinner plate in front of him. Although the population of Anyang Mountain has increased now, and there are even zombie sieges outside, the environment inside Anyang Mountain is getting better and better. Lin Chenghua has lived up to his trust, and the types of things he grows have increased. The quantity has also been greatly increased, and with the supplies brought back by the helicopter fleet that goes out to collect supplies every day in Anyang Mountain, 3 meals a day are absolutely guaranteed, and even the canteen in Anyang Mountain can now look like the end of the world. The dishes are served as in the previous canteen. Of course, the types of dishes are very rare, and the dishes are basically the same every day. But despite this, the people in the entire survivor base are in an inexplicable sense of great happiness if nothing else. Looking at the survivor bases in the entire 3 eastern provinces, even Changbei Mountain cannot reach the current living standards of Anyang Mountain. When people's happiness level increases, society becomes stable. Anyang Mountain is in such a state now. The facilities and living conditions in Anyang Mountain are quite good, especially since most of the survivors who make up Anyang Mountain are those who have struggled for a long time on their own and have already experienced the end of the world. They lived a terrible life in Anyang Mountain, and now they are in an environment like Anyang Mountain. They know that this system is not easy to come by. Therefore, these people now have a very strong sense of belonging to Anyang Mountain. Xia Bai twitched the corner of his mouth and asked, "Chen Yingying complained to you. What did she say?" Bai Lan glanced at Xia Bai and didn't ask any more questions about the topic just now. She smiled and said, "I didn't say anything. It's just Yi Hanayu. She said that Yi Hanayu has been crazy these past 2 days and is having conflicts with her parents. She herself doesn't know how to persuade her." Xia Bai said, "Yi Hanayu is having a conflict with her parents." When Xia Bai heard this, he felt that it was both reasonable and unreasonable. Because Yi Hanayu was originally a problem girl, quarreling with family members never seemed to be something surprising. However, after getting along with each other for this period of time, Xia Bai also knew that, although Yi Hanayu was young and had a bad personality, but in her heart, she is like a mirror. Under her carefree appearance, she sees everything clearly, especially in such an apocalyptic environment. She finally reunited with her family. Xia Bai couldn't help but said, "What is this? Speaking of which, I haven't seen Yi Hanayu for many days." Bai Lan said, "You have been bored in the air raid shelter every day for the past 2 days. Who have you seen, Xia? Bai was choked by Baelan and couldn't help but touch her nose. Baelan said, I don't know very well, but Yi Hanayu's relationship with her family is a bit complicated. Although we are her friends, we should stay less involved in her family's affairs. Chapter 275 New Situation. Chapter 278 New Situation. Xia Bai glanced at Baelan and thought about the somewhat frightening Yi Hanayu. After a moment of silence, he nodded silently. Of course, with how busy Xia Bai was these past 2 days, it was impossible for her to care about Yi Hanayu's affairs. Baelan thought for a while and said, but, what have you been busy with these 2 days? You don't go out to kill zombies anymore. You just hide in the air raid shelter all day long. Hey, I didn't do anything. Xia Bai smiled and said, but you should know it won't take long, Bai. Lang glanced at him and said, it's mysterious. Isn't it some yogurt flavored drink flavoring? Xia Bai was shocked. He thought, why would you think of this yogurt flavored flavoring, Bai? Lang responded with the kind of laughter that you should know what's going on. A man who even goes to Changbei Mountain to do business has to make a living by selling yogurt. Xia Bai couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. He decisively did not go into detail on this topic, but said, why haven't I seen Huan Qiulan recently? How far have the battleship personnel I want been recruited, Bai? Lang said, if you didn't see her, she must be hiding from you. I've helped you pay attention. The people you want are too broad. If Huan Qiulan wants to pull up such a group of people and leave it to you, you have to do it yourself. Facing a lot of troubles, this is equivalent to transferring people from the already formed physiques on any Yang mountain. When one person is transferred, a vacancy will be created, and you don't want Huan Qiulan to say that you are recruiting people. Of course, this process it's a little more troublesome. Xia Bai nodded slightly. In fact, he himself knew Huan Qiulan's difficulties. However, it was okay before the battleship was not upgraded to level 5. But now, the battleship has reached level 5, and adding new crew members has become very important. Of course, the battleship has reached level 5, and the manpower Xia Bai needs no longer needs to be so broad, but can become more specific. Xia Bai can discuss this with Huan Qiulan later. If there are books, it will be long, but if there are no books, it will be short. For Xia Bai and Baelan, this is just an ordinary meal. After talking about some serious things, the topic of these two people started to deviate a little bit. After learning about the situation in Anyang Mountain and the fun before, and after the end of the world, Xia Bai and Baelan also got up and left. After dinner, Xia Bai stood up and left the canteen, but immediately returned to the air raid shelter in the back mountain. The new level 5 battleship was docked in the central main area of the air raid shelter. Under the yellow lights inside the air raid shelter, it seemed to be dormant in the shadows. The huge monster inside exudes an astonishing coldness. All projects and facilities in the 5th level battleship are in operation, and Xia Bai is working overtime to build various things and upgrade various hardware facilities. Xia Bai invested all the nearly 20,000 energy points he had left after upgrading. When Xia Bai came over this time, he first took a look at the individual handheld shield that had just been made. Now the manufacturing system of the 5th level battleship has been upgraded, and the manufacturing speed is much faster than before. In just a short time, a lot of things have been built. But what Xia Bai was most interested in was undoubtedly this handheld shield. From the appearance, the thing looked like a push type grenade. There was a button at the top, which seemed a bit heavy in the hand. Xia Bai held the thing and stood on the bridge, raised his arms, and pressed the front end. Press the button, and a layer of ray shield is instantly activated from the shield device. The shield is oval shaped, and the length and width are no different from those in the system description. Xia Bai tried to take a pistol and shot it, but he was undoubtedly defensive. Xia Bai still liked this thing quite a lot. A shield and a body full of gravity grenades. Although Xia Bai alone still does not have a very strong means of killing enemies, but these two things alone, if used together, can make the opponent unkillable. He is still in a predicament of being suppressed by himself and unable to move. These two things are more functional, but they can play a more useful role than individual weapons of destruction. Xia Bai tinkered with this thing for a while, then sat on his captain's seat and called up a rough global map through the battleship's system. On this global map, special locations are marked with red dots. On the electronic map, they flicker slightly, as if they are breathing. The positions of the light marked by these red dots are the positions on the Earth of several other traceable alien facility modules that Xia Bai obtained through the alien device obtained from Bincheng Point. The closest one is located in the magical city of Shenzhen. Of course, this nearest is only compared to the others. The distance between Shenzhen and the 3 eastern provinces is quite far. However, now that we have battleships, it doesn't seem to be a problem to go to the magical city of Shenzhen Point. It's just that Xia Bai hesitated slightly. There are also undercurrents in Anyang Mountain Zombie Siege and Changbei Mountain Survivor Base. If he just drives a battleship to Shenzhen to find those alien facility modules, the situation here will be different when he comes back. Wouldn't it become completely one-sided? At this moment, Xia Bai might really be unable to leave point. He sat in his comfortable captain's seat, staring at the global map in front of him, looking at the slightly flashing red dots marked in it, and fell into silence. Point in the empty bridge. There was only Xia Bai, sitting at the intersection of shadow and light. Point on August 12, 2019. The 5th day after the completion of the 5th level upgrade of the battleship, Xia Bai's battleship left the air raid shelter for the first time and took off from Anyang Mountain Point. But this was not a routine test flight. The reason why Xia Bai took off at this moment was because Anyang Mountain received an emergency distress signal from the survivor base in Xinli County, north of Shengjing City. Xia Bai set off immediately from Anyang Mountain. It just so happened that in the past 5 days, all the preparations for upgrading his warship had been basically completed. Now he was going to Xinli County to test the same 5th level warship combat performance. Secondly, it also gathers a group of survivors for Anyang Mountain Point, and when Xia Bai's battleship slowly rose into the sky, casting a huge shadow on Anyang Mountain, all the survivors who saw this scene opened their mouths with incredible expressions. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.